Chapter 1092. The Liu Family. Liu Yinting and Liu Zhongtian, who were involved in the case, were thrown into jail immediately. Their bodyguards, their subordinates, and even many of their trusted subordinates were all arrested and brought to justice. The head of the Liu family, Liu Zhong's inside. He came back from outside with heavy steps. He'd just come out of jail. He went to ask those two people, who killed Qin Fanyang? Is Qin Fanyang dead? Is it confirmed? How can we find clues about Qin Fanyang? This is already our Liu clan's last and only hope. Where can we find him? Were you ordered by someone else? These were probably the questions that could give the Liu family a chance of survival. Liu Zhongxian was burning with anxiety. He asked again and again. This was already a top priority. At present, according to the minister, there was still a glimmer of hope to find Qin Fanyang. At least, the Liu family would be able to preserve their foundation and not be completely destroyed. But if they couldn't find him, the Yin family, the second most powerful family in Shangjing, had already controlled the entrance and exit of this place. Implicate the king of the right and get punished? What is the Liu family? The Yin family had already spread the news that they didn't want any of the Liu family's properties. They would be auctioned and donated. Anyone who dared to touch them would be an enemy of the king of the right. This was just to avenge the king of the right. As long as they couldn't hand over Qin Fanyang within the time limits set by the minister, they would immediately take action. Not only the Liu family, but the other three families were also in the same situation. Liu Zhongxian walked into the house with a heavy heart. The ancestor of the Liu family, Liu Wangsheng, personally came out to greet him. How is it? Did he say anything? Any useful clues? Liu Zhongxian shook his head. What did he say? Liu Wangsheng was anxious. This is already a matter of life and death. What? He didn't say anything? Liu Zhongxian sighed and said, This matter seems to be not as simple as we thought. Liu Wangsheng frowned. Is there anything else complicated about this matter? Is there something else? Zhongtian really doesn't know anything. Liu Zhongxian said in a low voice. Yinting seems to know something, but he won't say it. Why is that? The Liu clan is already in a desperate situation. Is he going to watch the entire Liu clan die? He said, if he didn't say anything, even if the Liu clan declined, it wouldn't necessarily be extinct. But if you do, the Liu clan is destined to be wiped out. There will be no luck. Liu Zhanxin sighed softly. Liu Wangsheng frowned and said, Doesn't that mean that the fortune court is in danger now? Liu Zhanxin sighed and said, Yinting himself said that this might be the last time he sees her. After this, I'm afraid, he'll be silenced very soon. Liu Wangsheng took a deep breath. Originally, it was just killing Qin Fanyang, a teacher of ancestral Dragon High martial arts. This matter only became a big deal after Minister Chu intervened. Before that, it was nothing. How'd it end up like this? Liu Yinting was the deputy chief of the Black Ops in Shangjing. He was a proper high-ranking official in Shangjing, with a high position and power. Who else would have the ability to make him the scapegoat for implicating his entire family and not dare to say anything? Even under the pressure of the Sky Inspecting Minister, he still didn't dare to say anything. It was just as Liu Wangsheng said. Qin Fanyang's matter wasn't considered a big deal before. How did it end up like this? Liu Zhanxin sighed and said, I asked again and again, but the fortune court kept his mouth shut. This time, I was only given 2 minutes of visiting time. 2 minutes, 1 billion. Liu Wangsheng sighed softly. Yes, for these 2 minutes of visiting time, the Liu clan paid a price of 1 billion. Just for one sentence and one clue. But in the end, they didn't come out with anything and returned disappointed. Although the minister's words carry enormous weight. But, after all, he can't personally preside over this matter. And in this, the benefits are too great. Many people with ulterior motives will use too many methods in the dark. After all, the county magistrate is not as good as the person in charge. The fortune court's concerns are also reasonable. It can't be said that we didn't gain anything. In the end, we found out that there was a mastermind behind this matter. This money was well spent, Liu Wangsheng said. But now there are changes that prevent us from leaving Shangjing as soon as possible. Why? Liu Zhanxin said. Didn't we agree that we've already submitted our resignation to His Majesty and got the approval of Shangjing Security Department? Our family will be exiled to the Five Poisons Valley in the far west, and we'll set off in these 2 days. Lu Wangsheng said, "You've been trying to smooth things over. I'm afraid you still don't know. Qin Fangyang's disciple, Zhou Xiaoduo, has already arrived in Shangjing." Zhou Xiaoduo? Lu Zhan Xin frowned. That hidden dragon martial genius? The strongest prodigy in the past 100 years? Yes, that's him. What's his background? He's a native of Phoenix City. His family background is extremely simple, but he himself is indeed a peerless prodigy. It's not enough to say that he's the strongest prodigy in the past 100 years. He also has an elder sister, the spiritual thought goddess who shook Shangjing. She's currently working in the Nine Heavens Pavilion. She's the boss of the Guaxian Division and the continent's Guaxian Inspector. Her code name is Civet. The combat power of this pair of siblings is very strong. Lu Wangxing said, "Even if they're peerless prodigies, they're still only at the Guaxian Division?" Lu Zhanxin said indifferently, "So what? What I'm worried about is naturally not these 2 siblings, but the Nine Heavens Pavilion behind them." Lu Wangsheng sighed and said, "When we leave, we won't be able to bring many trusted subordinates with us. Only those trustworthy family members can follow us. The others won't follow us at all. I believe that along the way, we'll definitely be intercepted and killed. You should understand the principle of everyone kicking a man who's down. At that time, I'm afraid it's not as safe as staying in Shangjing. Here, at the very least, we're still in the imperial capital of the empire. Under the feet of the emperor, it's not a lawless territory. Even if some people want to make a move, they'll have to think twice." Lu Zhanxin's eyes burst with a fierce light. "Elder Ancestor, our Lu clan is just too unlucky in this matter. It just so happened that the Sky Patrol minister killed the chicken to warn the monkey and used us as a raft to warn the world. Naturally, we can't go against the minister's orders. We can't even turn things around. But that's with Xiaoduo." Lu Wangxing said, "What do you want?" Lu Zhanxin took a deep breath and said, "You've said it yourself. That brat is just a native of a small border town. He has roots and doesn't have the strength of a heavenly transcendent. Rashly coming to Shangjing and behaving atrociously is even more foolish and short-sighted. If he dares to come, we'll kill him on the spot. Who will say anything against us then?" Lu Wangsheng said indifferently, "I advise you not to have such thoughts. Today is different from the past. Since Zhou Xiaoduo is here, he's here for revenge. Since he dares to come for revenge, he must have the confidence. Our Lu clan is already at the brink of collapse. We can't have our previous mentality and methods anymore. Right now, I'm only thinking of letting a few more people survive. At this time, I still want to vent my anger. Rest for now." Lu Wangxing sighed sorrowfully. "Zhanxin, why can't you see it clearly until now? Now, the Lu clan is finished. At this juncture, it's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. You don't have to be so pessimistic." Lu Zhanxin said unwillingly. Even the minister only said that he would drive us out of the capital. He didn't say anything about killing us. Could it be that someone really wants to exterminate the Lu clan? The current situation. Lu Wangxing sighed softly. If a few children of the Lu clan's direct bloodline can survive, this old man will already thank the heavens for treating our Lu clan so well. Lu Zhanxin's face changed color. Even our ancestors' battle achievements have been erased. This is the first time in his life that the minister has erased the battle achievements of an old friend who has already died. Zhanxin, how can you still be so careless and arrogant? Do you know? At that moment, if we were to sit and wait for death in exchange for the lives of a few direct descendants, I would be happy. No, I would be happy to see it happen. Why don't you think about the minister's tone at that time? Lu Wangxing was senile. His eyes were watery. Are we supposed to stretch out our necks and let the enemy kill us for revenge? Not resist? Lu Zhanxin looked at Lu Wangsheng in disbelief. You better do that. Lu Wangsheng said lightly. That's the only way to survive. Lu Zhanxin didn't say anything. This old man will go in and tidy up the ancestral tablets. Lu Wangxing turned around and warned, "Don't have any thoughts of resistance. Not only to the people who want revenge, but also to other people. You have to remember this old man's words. Our Lu clan can't afford to offend anyone now." Lu Zhanxin stood in the courtyard in a daze. He watched the curtain of night fall. He only felt sad. Just after Lu Wangxing entered the ancestral hall, a scream suddenly came from the Lu clan's backyard. A woman screamed shrilly, "Someone come quickly. How can I be poisoned? Come." With this scream, it seemed like a prelude. Screams came from all directions, one after another. Lu Zhanxin turned his head in panic. "What happened? There's poison in the water." A Lu clan member rushed out. His face was green. When he saw Lu Zhanxin's face, he couldn't help but shed tears of despair. "Clan Lord, you are also poisoned." "Ha ha ha." Lu Zhanxin laughed bitterly. "Old ancestor, we want to keep the peace. We want to be slaughtered in exchange for a way to live. But others won't let us go." He felt a ball of fire in his heart suddenly burning. In just a moment, the Yuan power that he had cultivated for many years could no longer be contained. What kind of poison is this? Lu Zhanxin's body swayed. He sat on the ground with a poof. The Lu clan member who had just come out had already fallen to the ground. His whole body twitched. His facial features, 7 apertures, suddenly spat out blue flames. He only spasmed for a moment before he stopped breathing. Lu Zhanxin worked hard to circulate his Yuan power. He looked miserable and didn't dare to move at all. In the Lu clan's big courtyard, shrill screams came from all directions. Blue flames kept coming out, that even the infants were not spared. Lu Wangxing came out of the ancestral hall. He felt something was wrong. The ancestral tablets were scattered all over the ground. He rushed into the backyard like flying. But he only saw corpses all over the ground. Men, women, old and young of the Lu clan, no less than 3,000 people, were all lying on the ground in disorder. "Who is it?" Lu Wangxing roared. Tears flowed down his cheeks. "We already planned to not resist. We only asked for compassion. Why do they have to kill us like this?" Not even a chicken or dog was spared. Not a single person from the Lu clan was spared. No wonder. No wonder Zhanxin was allowed to meet Yinting. No wonder. So they already knew. Not a single person from the Lu clan will survive. Lu Wangxing felt the poison in his body acting up. His body was on the verge of collapse. As the ancestor with the highest cultivation in the Lu clan, Lu Wangxing, who had reached the Skysoar realm, was actually unable to suppress this strange poison. The Lu clan is finished. Lu Wangxing tried his best to control the poison and staggered out. "Zhanxin, Zhanxin." He saw Lu Zhanxin sitting upright at the entrance of the courtyard, looking at him with a face full of despair. "Ancestor, I can't hold on any longer." Lu Zhanxin's eyes bulged. "Ancestor, the Lu clan has been exterminated. Please, hold on a little longer." Lu Zhanxin cried out, "Please, hold on until Zhou Xiaoduo arrives." He mustered all his strength to say this. His body trembled. Suddenly, blue flames emerged from his 7 orifices. "I can't accept this." Lu Zhanxin cried out miserably in the blue flames. "I can't accept this." The flames rose, and the poison spread. Even his blood turned blue. His internal organs were destroyed. Blood spurted out from his mouth and nose, burning like flames. That this poison was extremely overbearing. It did not leave anyone with a chance to live. Lu Wangxing's face was filled with grief. He slowly sat down and used all his remaining energy to protect his heart. He poured bottle after bottle of spirit water into his mouth. "I can't die. Just like Zhanxin said, I have to wait. I have to wait for Zhou Xiaoduo." Lu Wangxing's old face was filled with endless grief. He had absolute confidence that even if the minister gave the order, the entire Lu clan would not be wiped out. Even the old subordinates of the Heavenly King would not be so cruel. Even if Zhou Xiaoduo came for revenge, even if Zhou Xiaoduo's cultivation was heaven-defying, he would not kill an infant. As long as the bloodline remained, the Lu clan would not be exterminated. Only the mastermind behind the scenes would want the entire Lu clan to be wiped out. Now, the Lu clan had no hope. The extermination of the entire Lu clan was a foregone conclusion. Their only hope for revenge was Zhou Xiaoduo, who was coming to settle the score with them. It had to be said that this was a kind of irony. Zhou Xiaoduo, don't you want revenge? Come quickly. Lu Wangsheng anxiously roared his heart. Although the Lu clan is exterminated, as long as I have one breath left, I can still provide you with some clues. Zhou Xiaoduo, why aren't you coming? Chapter 1093. In the night, Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaoyan were calmly shuttling through the neon lights. In fact, they had already locked onto their target. In front of them was the big house of the Lu family. This house covered an area of more than 170 acres. In Shangjing City, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, this big house was almost a sight to behold. Almost every one of these large families would complain from time to time that their family's courtyard was too small, that it wasn't enough for them to live in, that it was impolite in front of others, and so on. But in reality, almost every family's courtyard was like a small castle. The grandeur of every family was absolutely to the extent that the so-called richest man in the secular world would be absolutely dumbfounded and unable to imagine. Although there was still some distance to the residential area of those big families, there were very few people who dared to wander around here. Therefore, the surrounding environment was very quiet and secluded. After all, these places were really not places that ordinary people could come to. This was because, for ordinary people, this was definitely a dangerous area. Even if there was no reason, it was not strange for people to mysteriously evaporate when they passed by here. And even if they were evaporated, there was no place to find them, let alone reason with them. This had almost become an unwritten rule. Mortals should not pass by where immortals lived. This sentence seemed to be a bit difficult to understand. But to put another way, where tigers lived, rabbits would definitely not dare to pass by. This was easy to understand. Something doesn't feel right. Zhou Xiaoduo frowned and looked ahead. Zhou Xiaoduo, who was proficient in the god of appearance, had a naturally sensitive spiritual sense. And his spiritual sense was far sharper than that of ordinary warriors. Something does feel wrong. Zhou Xiaoyan, who also sensed it, frowned. It feels like a large number of souls are dissipating. Yes, Zhou Xiaoduo flew up. We have to speed up. Maybe something happened to our target. Something happened? Zhou Xiaoyan flew up as well and said, could it be that someone wants to silence them? It's quite possible. As Zhou Xiaoduo sped up, he lightly said, I have a feeling that this matter is not as simple as it seems. Although the minister has found the culprit behind the assassination attempt on Teacher Qin, there is still a mastermind behind it. Do you know why I made such a big commotion as soon as I arrived in Shangjing? First of all, it was my childhood wish. Second of all, I was deliberately beating the grass to scare the snake. By exposing my whereabouts, I wanted to see if anyone would silence me. So Xiaoduo chuckled. We have Grandpa as our backer. We must lure the evil out of the cave before this relationship is exposed. If their relationship was exposed, who would dare to cause trouble? Grandpa is the fiend ancestor. Who wouldn't be afraid? Now, doesn't this prove that my guess was correct? Sure enough, someone tried to silence him. Since someone tried to silence him, it proves that Qin Laoshi's death isn't as simple as a group of dragons fighting over a spot. At the very least, the matter isn't as simple as it seems. There's still a mastermind behind the scenes. How can I let him go? Zhou Xiaoduo snorted. His eyes flashed with murderous intent. It was bone-chilling. The two of them sped up again. With a whoosh, they were already in the sky above the Lu family. The two of them looked down as far as they could. They saw that it was brightly lit below. However, the Lu family members were all lying dead on the ground. Just as I expected, Zhou Xiaoduo quickly landed. Zhou Xiaoyan's cold aura and Zhou Xiaoduo's hot aura protected their whole body. They were in perfect coordination. So many people from the Lu family had died, but there was no blood. They were obviously poisoned. And in the headquarters of such an aristocratic family with many years of history, so many people were silently poisoned and died. Aside from the fact that the poison was abnormally overbearing, the poisoner's methods were also extremely sophisticated. No matter which aspect they considered, the two of them didn't dare to let down their guard. Let's see if there's anyone alive and find out the situation. Zhuo Xiaoyan shouted. Okay. Zhuo Xiaoduo went to the front yard, and Zhuo Xiaoyan went to the backyard. They moved separately with great tacit understanding. While searching, Zhuo Xiaoduo's heart became calmer and calmer. He was no longer anxious. After understanding this matter, Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that it was strange. The quota of the dragons fighting for the heritage. This reason was definitely enough. However, since Qin Fangyang had such a purpose, his goal should have been very clear from the beginning. It was impossible for it to be exposed only recently. Going back to the origin, Qin Fangyang should have entered the ancestral dragon high school as soon as he came to teach there. His initial motive was to obtain the quota of the dragons fighting for the heritage. It was also at that time that he started a plan. And this purpose, in the eyes of those who were observant, should have been as clear as fire. It was difficult to hide. Those people had always thought that the quota of the dragons fighting for the heritage was in their pockets. If they felt that Qin Fangyang was a threat to the quota of the dragons fighting for the heritage, they should have taken action long ago. They should not have delayed it until now. Now that the dragons fighting for the heritage was approaching, it attracted more attention, aroused suspicion, and made people think. However, since the other party did not deal with Qin Fangyang earlier, but came to deal with him now, just because of half a quota of the dragons fighting for the heritage. The gains did not make up for the losses, and it was even more unreasonable. Moreover, his name as the #1 genius of the continent had long been famous. There should be a quota of the dragons fighting for the heritage no matter what. Killing his own teacher for a quota that should have been given to him? Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that something was wrong. Now, the Lu family had been exterminated in addition to being in trouble. This was originally within Zhuo Xiaoduo's expectations. Rather than calling it extermination, it was better to call it extermination. Since the Lu family was involved in this matter, Zhuo Xiaoduo's initial idea was to directly go to their door and kill them. First, he would avenge himself and Qin Fangyang. However, after thinking about it, he still chose to expose his whereabouts first. A massacre would naturally be able to vent the hatred in his heart, but a rash action could be used by others, and the real culprit would go unpunished. That would make Teacher Qin die with grievances. Now, with the matter of extermination, he could already be sure that there was another real culprit behind this matter. The real culprit was afraid that the Lu family would expose him, so he had no choice but to silence them. In other words, the Lu family was just an exposed chess piece. At this time, a painful groan came from the front, so Xiaoduo's expression changed, and with a whoosh, he quickly flew over. The ancestor of the Lu family, Lu Wangsheng, was on the verge of death. He felt that the fierce poison in his body could no longer be suppressed, and the poison flowed into his heart meridian. 99% of his body was filled with strong poison. He breathed his last in an instant. Death was approaching step by step, close at hand. Zhuo Xiaoduo, why aren't you here yet? Lu Wangsheng fiercely bit his tongue, feeling the last pain of his life. You, come quickly. I'm coming. Zhuo Xiaoduo landed with a swoosh. Lu Wangsheng's eyes suddenly brightened. Using all the strength in his body, he shouted hoarsely, Qin Fangyang's matter. They're still. Before his voice fell, Zhuo Xiaoduo had already poured a bottle of life water into his mouth. At the same time, the Heavenman stone suddenly stuck to Lu Wangsheng's palm. An extremely surging life force madly poured in. In an instant, Lu Wangsheng's body was already full of life force. However, his internal organs had long been corroded by the strong poison and were riddled with holes. No matter how abundant the life force was, it was already unable to repair them. Even if the Heavenman stone could produce endless life force and restore the soul and extend life, in the end, it couldn't completely restore a damaged body that had long decayed and was still decaying. And now, Lu Wangsheng's body was tantamount to a damaged body that couldn't be reconstructed. He was barely hanging on by a breath. At the moment of struggling for life, his mind was still clear. In fact, the poison was seeping into his body bit by bit. What was more serious was that his internal organs had completely decayed. No magical power could heal him. Even the meridians and blood vessels in his entire body were already full of poison. This kind of situation was really hopeless. Lu Wangsheng, who was filled with abundant life force, only felt a burst of comfort all over his body. His mind, which had gradually become muddled, became clear again. His body seemed to have strength again, but how could an old Taoist like him not know that his life had come to an end? Now, it was just a momentary recovery of consciousness with Zhuo Xiaoduo's efforts. But he still couldn't help but look at the small stone that Zhuo Xiaoduo had just put away. His heart was filled with endless surprise. In this world, there is actually such a strange object that could still prolong his terrible physical condition for one more breath and forcefully slow down the footsteps of the god of death. Huff, huff. Lu Wangsheng, who knew the condition of his body, didn't even dare to breathe heavily. He used the last of his strength, combined with the abundant life force that Zhuo Xiaoduo had helped to replenish, and sealed his eyes, nose, ears, and lower body. He sealed all the orifices in his body. Only then did he smile sadly. It's useless. The poison that the whole Lu family has been poisoned with is the immortal ascension poison. There's always been no cure, no luck. Zhuo Xiaoduo's face twitched subconsciously. The immortal ascension poison. This name obviously sounded very nice, but who would have thought that it was actually a kind of extremely vicious poison in its bones? This kind of poison was colorless and tasteless. A skilled poison master could even blend it into the air and use it. Once one was poisoned, there was no cure, no luck. And the poisoned person wouldn't feel anything unusual in the first few hours. But once the poison broke out, the person's internal organs would instantly rot, and there would be no room for resistance. The moment the poison broke out, the poisoned person wouldn't feel a sharp pain in his heart. Instead, there was a very strange feeling of comfort, as if he was floating in the air. Then this comfortable feeling would turn into a torrent that would rush through the body, through every orifice in the body, including the 5 orifices, the 7 orifices, the front and back of the lower body, including the navel and the gushing spring. When the torrent rushed out of the body, the person would be like a firework, returning to a moment of brilliance. All the skin, flesh, internal organs, and blood would turn into flying ashes and become dust with the sky. It was precisely because this poison was so overbearing that it was called the immortal ascension poison. After spitting out the turbid things like the heart, liver, spleen, stomach, and kidneys, the person would naturally ascend. Chapter 1094. Lu Wangsheng used the new life force to seal all the orifices in his body, but left his mouth open. He wanted to keep his mouth open to tell Zhuo Xiaoduo his last words. I think you must have a lot to say to me. Zhuo Xiaoduo covered his mouth and said, but you don't have much time left. Looking at your condition, you only have 1 minute at most. Seize the last chance. Lu Wangsheng kept his mouth shut and nodded. You can choose the important things to say. Zhuo Xiaoduo said deeply, I'll listen to whatever you say. I'll consider it carefully. Lu Wangsheng's white hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were bleak and desperate. He still kept his mouth shut and nodded, indicating that he had heard and understood. Zhuo Xiaoduo let go of his hand. There's another mastermind behind Qin Fangyang's death. Lu Wangsheng's voice was a little muffled. He stared at Zhuo Xiaoduo's face and said with difficulty, the dragons fighting over the veins is just an excuse. The real cause of Qin Fangyang's death is something else. Someone is manipulating. Puff. As Lu Wangsheng spoke, blue flames began to surge out of his mouth. His organs and blood turned into blue flames and surged out of the only orifices that were still open. He could no longer suppress the strong poison, but he struggled hard. His lips opened and closed, and he used the last of his strength to speak because he knew that this would be the last time in his life. Qin Fangyang's death was not because of the dragons fighting over the veins. The mastermind only used the gimmick of the dragons fighting over the veins and people's habitual thinking to complete and cover up this matter. But the truth of the matter has little to do with the dragons fighting over the veins. If it's just for a place, there's no need to do it. Or they could have done it earlier and let Qin Fangyang know the difficulty and retreat. I can even say that. The mastermind's target is not Qin Fangyang himself, nor is it the dragons fighting over the veins. Huff. Lu Wangxing spat out a large ball of blue flames from his mouth, and his entire body shriveled up. However, his eyes, which were still glaring, suddenly brightened. At the last moment of his life, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration, which made him think of something. He stared at Zhuo Xiaoduo's face and used the last of his strength to say, "I suspect that the Black Hand's target is." The voice suddenly stopped. His eyes were still firmly fixed on Zhuo Xiaoduo's face, but he couldn't say a word, not a single word. He was already dead. There were no longer blue flames gushing out of his mouth. However, the words he wanted to say, in the end, he was unable to finish. He died with hatred, and his death was filled with hatred. "Dead," Zhuo Xiaoduo said to Zhuo Xiaoyan, who had just arrived. "What did he say?" "That's pretty much what I guessed." Zhuo Xiaoduo felt a little remorseful. He should have said his judgment before Lu Wangsheng opened his mouth. That way, Lu Wangsheng could have saved a lot of breath. Most of what Lu Wangxing said was consistent with his guess, but he did not mention the most important suspect. However, that would also mean that Lu Wangxing wouldn't be able to say a single word before dying in vain because he had wasted too much time that now that he was dead, it was useless to regret. He could not help but start to think about the last sentence Lu Wangsheng said. Lu Wangxing's eyes were still staring at Zhuo Xiaoduo's face. He desperately wanted to finish the last flash of inspiration in his life, but in the end, he did not finish. "What's the situation?" Zhuo Xiaoyan looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo. "The last person Mr. Qin contacted was you, and then he disappeared. And according to the time when Mr. Qin was killed should be when I was with the Umno Alliance and just came out of the Demon Spirit Forest. In other words, I was actually safe at that time. It's just that you didn't get the exact information that I was safe. Because of two changes, the situation developed into the current situation." So Xiaoduo carefully analyzed the situation bit by bit. The first change was that at that time, I didn't know Grandpa's identity, so I hid for 2 days. The news of my safety was delayed, and Mr. Qin's accident happened in those 2 days. Could it have something to do with this? Now, we can be sure that Mr. Qin's death was definitely not because of a group of dragons fighting for a place and a half. The last person he contacted was you, but he was killed after I got out of danger. Then, the real target of the mastermind is either you or me. Zhuo Xiaoduo's brain was spinning fast. He thought, I think there's at least a 90% chance that their target is me. He lowered his head and looked at Lu Wangxing's empty eyes that were still staring at him. So Xiaoduo sighed softly. There's a 90% chance that the mastermind's real target is me. Their ultimate goal of assassinating Mr. Qin is to lure me to Shangjing. Zhuo Xiaoyan frowned and said, but the minister inspecting Sky has confirmed that this matter was done by those who had a vested interest in the group of dragons fighting for a place. This is the second change. The minister's intervention was beyond everyone's expectations. Zhuo Xiaoduo said, in fact, the mastermind's cover was also the group of dragons fighting for a place. If there was an accident, they could use it as an excuse. But those who were exposed, if I'm not wrong, were just pawns. The real mastermind didn't even move a finger. He used them to achieve his goal. As far as the mastermind is concerned, it doesn't matter if all those who had a vested interest in the group of dragons fighting for a place are dead. It's just a group of scapegoats. If all of them are dead, all the relevant clues will be destroyed. He will only clap his hands and cheer. The mastermind used the habits and inertia of the major clans to add fuel to the fire and facilitate this situation. After that, no matter how things develop, whether or not there will be powerful people involved, his goal has been achieved. Because I'm now in Shangjing, I'm here to avenge Mr. Qin. Before I get my revenge, I can't leave. So, the mastermind has enough time to operate and start a new game against me. If there's something that the mastermind didn't expect, it's probably our real background. It's not ordinary, and we have a super strong support like the devil ancestor's grandfather. There's also our own strength. It's just that these are uncontrollable accidents. If I were given a valuation of the mastermind's current layout, there's only one word: perfect. After hearing Zhou Xiaoduo's evaluation, Zhou Xiaoyan instinctively sucked in a breath of cold air. She knew very well that her brother rarely had such a high evaluation of others. However, when she thought about it carefully, she couldn't help but feel creeped out. So, who is the mastermind? Zhou Xiaoyan frowned. I don't know yet. I think this person from the Lu family doesn't know either. Zhou Xiaoduo looked at Lu Wangshan and sighed softly. Although the facts had proven that he had guessed correctly, there was still an indescribable sense of grievance in his heart. He had a faint feeling that maybe the last words that Lu Wangshan said to him were all within the mastermind's expectations. Only in this way could he be sure of the direction of the truth and not leave. He would stay in Shanjing for a long time and continue to investigate. And this result was what the mastermind was happy to see and hoped to see. If the other party had really calculated even this point, then it wasn't simply perfect, it was terrifying and appalling. The other three families. Are we still going? Zhou Xiaoyan cast a hesitant look at Zhou Xiaoduo's face. I think it's meaningless to go now. Zhou Xiaoduo smiled bitterly. The mastermind is so meticulous. Since they want to silence us, they won't just kill one family. The facts proved that Zhou Xiaoduo's guess was right. After a while, the sirens outside were heard everywhere. The whole Shanjing city suddenly became chaotic. Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaoyan looked at each other and sighed. They directly melted into the void and circled Shanjing city in the night sky. They also went to see the other three families, but they didn't have to go down to see in person, because there wasn't a single living person in these four families. It was clear at a glance. Whether it was the elderly in their twilight years, the children in their swaddling clothes, or the innocent servants and guards, they were all dead. Not a single chicken or dog was left alive. Not even a blade of grass was left. Originally, these families were super families with deep roots. Many of their descendants weren't in Shanjing. It was actually quite difficult to say that all of them were wiped out overnight. But the current situation was that the order of the sky inspecting minister came true. After that order, the families were all dismissed from their positions. Then they had to rush back to their families one by one to discuss what to do next. Those who were dismissed were all beaten up. No one dared to leave their family members in the area where they were working. They all brought them back. The current situation of the four families could be said to be an unprecedented gathering and reunion. Even those who stood out in the previous competition weren't spared. They were also dismissed and returned home. Everyone was waiting quietly for the final result from the top and the subsequent response of the families. At this time, no matter how far away they were, they had already returned out at this time, a poison. A real family, neatly arranged, headed to the netherworld together. Shanjing City was in chaos. The Lu family, Bai family, Fan family, and En family, the four families, were all wiped out on the same day. No one was left alive. Even those related people who had already been caught died at around the same time. They were all killed in prison. In just one afternoon, more than 13,000 people in Shanjing were wiped out. And among these 13,000 people, more than 90% were martial artists. There was no lack of high-level cultivators. This was a super big case. The four families were wiped out, and their bloodlines were wiped out. The entire Shanjing was shaken, shocked, and horrified. This was the biggest murder case in Shanjing City in thousands of years. Chapter 1095. It was the first time in tens of thousands of years that such a horrible murder case had happened in Shanjing City, the core of the empire. The emperor was furious, and he ordered a thorough investigation. To be able to kill so many people in one night and even silence those who were imprisoned in the heavenly prison. How powerful was this murderer? After causing such a huge commotion, how could there not be any clues to be found? However, There were no clues at all from the four noble families. Of the 3 squads of guards in the prison, 2 squads committed suicide by consuming poison, while the last squad of more than 50 people was completely annihilated by the experts. Not a single person was left alive. The emperor was so angry that he smashed a cup in the palace. Investigate. No matter what, we must find a murderer. The reason why he said he wanted to find the murderer was because that outside the walls of the Liu family and the Bai family, someone wrote a few words, "Those who implicated the heavenly king of the right die." How could these words not cause people to have wild and fanciful thoughts? Was it to avenge the heavenly king of the right? Was that why they did this? Yes, if they were not the right-hand men of the heavenly king of the right, how could they have such power and guts? Countless people couldn't help but think. However, the more he thought about it, this method, wasn't a little too vicious? On the other hand, the Yin family, who had been saying that they would seek justice for the heavenly king of the right, were all dumbfounded. In the whole of Shangjing City, the Yin family, as the second most powerful family, was furious. They said that they would kill these families to avenge the heavenly king of the right. They even said that they would distribute the family property after they killed these families. Auction and donation. Now, everyone from the 4 clans was dead. They were all dead. They were all dead. They were all dead. Just like what the Yin family said, the Yin family was really sharp. Their words carried enormous weight, and they acted decisively and decisively. The Yin family became like a pile of yellow mud that fell into their pants. Even if it wasn't shit, it was shit. What the fuck was this that everyone in the Yin family was depressed? They had no one to vent their frustrations to. The reason why he didn't mention it was because the Yin family was one of the few families in Shangjing City who could do all this without anyone noticing. They had the power, the ability, the manpower, and the power to do all this. The most important thing was that they still had motive. It was just released a few days ago. Everything seemed to be a perfect match, seamless and flawless. The Yin family was the scapegoat for all of this. No matter how he washed it, it was impossible to wash it clean. No matter how he argued, it was difficult to distinguish between the two. However, the Yin family knew very well that they didn't do it. The old master of the Yin family was so angry that he smashed the entire study. Who did it? The old patriarch's roar almost blew the roof off. We didn't do anything. It wasn't us. That was the sentence that the Yin family repeated the most during their argument. However, not many people were willing to believe it. Everyone in Shangjing City agreed that even if the Yin family didn't do it, they must have something to do with it. How could there be such a coincidence? You guys just released the news that you were going to destroy them, and they were destroyed. Then you guys said that it had nothing to do with you guys. Do you think we are fools? If he did it, then so be it. He actually pretended to be wronged. Who was he trying to show? Where was the responsibility of a big family? Yu Dongtian, the king of the right, was addicted to shifting the blame every day. However, this time, the Yin family who stood up for him took the blame. They didn't even know who did it. They were just as innocent as those who were blamed by the king of the right. The old master of the Yin family was about to vomit blood, because that some of his old friends even came out of their seclusion to have a long talk with the old master. He patted the old master's shoulder earnestly and said, "Old Master Yin, I have to say that this matter is a little too much." The old master was so angry that he was about to have a brain hemorrhage, but he still tried to defend himself. "It wasn't my family who did it. I know. Of course it wasn't your family. It really wasn't my family. I swear to God. I understand. Don't worry. Although it's a big deal, those people are all criminals. They deserve to die. Nothing serious will happen. It's just that this method is too vicious. It's against the harmony of heaven. It really wasn't my family who did it. Why are you so anxious? Do you think I can report you? I understand. Isn't it better for people to know about it than to see it?" The old master picked up the broom and angrily threw out his old friend who had been with him for 1,700 years. "It really wasn't my family who did this. It really wasn't." Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian were in Zhou Xiaonian's room. They looked at each other, speechless for a long time. But now, All the clues that were on the surface had been cut off overnight with a snap. Zhou Xiaoduo's original intention in coming to Shangjing was to settle accounts with the 4 influential families. However, as soon as he arrived, the 4 influential families were all dead. If the Nian family was the #1 suspect in the destruction of the 4 influential families, then the #2 suspect would be Zhou Xiaoduo. Cough. If it weren't for the fact that Zhou Xiaoduo was weak, had a simple background, and didn't have enough resources at hand, the Nian family would have been ranked as the #1 suspect. Of course, that was what Zhou Xiaoduo was thinking. His chest was filled with hatred. His first thought was to pick up the sledgehammer and smash the sky red with blood. He didn't care if they were innocent or not. He just wanted to kill them and make a river of blood. He wanted to kill every single one of them. However, the reality was that he didn't have time to do anything. The sledgehammer was still in the space ring. Their entire families were gone. Although there wasn't a river of blood, the 4 influential families were all dead. They died more cleanly than if Zhou Xiaoduo had really killed them. So Xiaoduo even rejoiced that the 2 of them had some tricks up their sleeves and left the scene early. Otherwise, if they really met the people from the government who arrived later, it would be the same as being caught red-handed. They would be the best scapegoats and would not be able to escape. This whole thing is so strange. It's so unusual. The more Zhou Xiaoyan thought about it, the more frightened she felt. Xiaoduo, this is so unusual. Think about it. If you think about it carefully, how big of a trap is this? How many connections, manpower, and material forces do they have to be able to set up such a trap so thoroughly and flawlessly? Zhou Xiaoduo was silent for a long time. After thinking for a long time, he took out a large piece of paper and started to write and draw, trying to figure out the whole thing. He really missed Li Qinglong now. If Li Qinglong were here, he would be able to straighten everything out quickly and trace back to the origin through the details. However, when it came to him, he needed to deduce it bit by bit. He couldn't be sure if there were any mistakes that he hadn't considered. Yeah, it's really terrifying. What's more, we don't even know the real purpose and ultimate goal of the other party. We don't know what they want to do by setting up such a big trap. But it's undeniable that we're already in the middle of it. It's hard to extricate ourselves from it. Zhou Xiaoduo first drew a small circle in the middle. This is the other party's deployment in Shangjing. The central point is here. The other party has an extremely large and impressive force in Shangjing. This force can be said to cover all aspects. Perhaps, in some aspects, it's even stronger than the government's army. This is certain. If not for this, they wouldn't have been able to wipe out the 4 great clans at the same time. They didn't even let go of the people in the prison. They didn't leave any traces behind and ensured that no one would be able to trace them. It's really amazing. In Shangjing, the center of Yanwu, to be able to come and go without a trace, and to have such a huge and meticulous plan to wipe out the 4 great clans, this force, even at the most conservative estimate, has infiltrated many government departments. This force, which has always been in the dark, has always been feared by everyone. So far, it has only revealed a part of its full strength. Because, after this incident, everyone is bound to realize that there is such a force hidden in Shangjing. As for the true strength of the other party, it's hard to say whether they've already revealed the majority of it or just the tip of the iceberg. But, with the other party's meticulous and thorough plan, I estimate that this part of their strength that they have to reveal is only a small part of their strength. And even if it's just a part of their strength, it's still not considered as being exposed. After all, until now, there hasn't been any flaws that can be traced. As for the rest of their strength, it's still in hibernation. There's still room to maneuver. Zhou Xiaoduo raised his head and pondered hard, racking his brain. If this matter really has something to do with me, and I just escaped from the Alliance's demonic forest, then the first thing they did was to use the dragons fighting for the Heritage incident to set up a trap and kill Teacher Qin. What kind of relationship would there be between the two? Or should I say, how big is the relationship between the two? So Xiaoduo frowned and said, "This hidden force is so huge, and its hiding strength is equally amazing. It's hard to find out. Could it be the work of a senior magus of the Alliance?" Zhua Xiaoyan was shocked. Can this matter involve a senior magus? It's possible, but it's also a little impossible. Zhua Xiaoduo murmured, it's possible. The Umno Alliance and the Astral Souls have been opposing each other for countless years. It's natural for them to send spies to the enemy's territory. The Umno Alliance's spies that appeared in Phoenix City in the past are examples. Phoenix City is a small border city, but the Umno Alliance's spies could be so powerful. If it's Shangjing, the capital city of the human race, how can the Umno Alliance's spies be small? However, the Umno Alliance's spies in Shangjing are very powerful, but the Umno Alliance's senior magi don't seem to have any evil intentions towards me. For example, Senior Magi Wudu, Senior Magus Zhu Meng, Senior Magus Dan Kong, Senior Magus Bing Ming. At least these 4 senior magi don't have a reason to kill me. If they wanted to kill me, they wouldn't have let me go back to the Astral Souls. Chapter 1097. Then, Zhua Xiaoduo realized that Zhua Xiaoyan's speed was slightly faster than his. Moreover, his aura was so long and profound that it seemed to be much stronger than his own. That shouldn't be the case, right? Although his trip to the Umno Alliance was fraught with danger, the benefits and improvements he had made were shocking. Whether it was Zhu Wu's inheritance, Elder Wan's gift, or Sire Shui's challenge, all of them had allowed him to make breakthroughs time and time again. At the very least, he felt that his strength was unrivaled among his peers. He had even fantasized about suppressing Nian Mao more than once in his dreams. But from the looks of it now, it was probably just a dream. While flying, Zhua Xiaoduo confirmed what he was thinking. I can't catch up. I can't catch up. My current speed is already my limit, but Sister Nian still looks like she has more energy left. He felt even more depressed. I still can't catch up? However, he did not give up and asked tentatively, Nian Mao, your profound returning level cultivation. What level has it reached? Is it the pinnacle? How many times have you suppressed it? Zhua Xiaoyan had long reached the pinnacle of the returning profound realm, and under by Yunhua's guidance, she had made rapid progress. Her cultivation had already reached the pinnacle of the returning profound realm, and she had suppressed it 36 times. But this concerned her bottom line. So how could she tell Zhua Xiaoduo the truth? This puppy was also in the returning profound realm now. She was probably thinking about something that she shouldn't have, right? I just reached the pinnacle of the returning profound realm. Zhua Xiaoyan smiled. I just started suppressing it once or twice. Like hell, I'll believe you. Zhua Xiaoduo rolled his eyes. I might have just reached the returning profound realm, but I'm not blind. You're telling me that you've just reached the pinnacle of the returning profound realm? You've only suppressed it once or twice. Who are you trying to fool? Do you think I'll believe you? Then, you're not as fast as me? Zhua Xiaoduo replied. I'm already at the pinnacle of the returning profound realm, and with the help of a divine artifact, I've already suppressed my origin energy 97 times. 97 times? Zhua Xiaoyan almost burst out laughing. Little doggy really dared to brag. He smiled and said, Puppy, you're awesome. Zhua Xiaoduo was going crazy. How many times have you done this? Give me an accurate number. Zhua Xiaoyan rolled her eyes and flew away with the wind. Come and chase me, dog. Zhua Xiaoduo chased after him with all his might. Is there any benefit in catching up? What benefits do you want? Once I catch up to you, you'll let me. Get lost. The two of them sped off even more swiftly like a bolt of lightning, and they even emanated copious amounts of soul energy, all the way out of the city. According to the information, the direction Qin Fangyang had fled in was the wilderness. With a light boom, 2 auras, one cold and one hot, suddenly exploded, with the place where the two of them were walking side by side as the boundary, one left and one right. The auras spread out in all directions in a grandiose manner. Along the way, the 300 miles around them did not miss anything. It was as if a huge phoenix had suddenly spread its wings of ice and fire, sweeping across the vast land. Even Lei Chantian, who was hiding high in the sky and sneakily following them all the way, could not help but be shocked by this scene. Fuck! This soul energy was really too unexpected. It was as if it could cover the heavens and the earth. Strictly speaking, this soul energy was indeed tyrannical, but it was still not enough to enter the eyes of the demon ancestor, who was at the pinnacle of this world. However, this soul energy came from a boy and a girl in their early 20s. It was a different matter. The demon ancestor instantly felt inferior. When this old man was at this age, my spiritual energy was probably not even 1/10 of either of them. What a waste of the fact that this old man was praised as a great genius by the people around me since I was young. If this old man was a great genius, then what are they? I thought my grandson was a super genius, but I didn't expect my granddaughter to be a super genius too. These two little fellows can no longer be described as geniuses. Monsters, two monsters. It's just that. I clearly followed them all the way to investigate this matter, but I'm still confused. What's going on? My brain is a mess. Looks like in a team, there must be a brain-like existence. Who was the brain-like existence back then? Zhuo Changchong? Damn it. This guy's brain is all about picking up girls. Back then, the brain-like existence seemed to be Qin Sha. What a pity, what a pity. My daughter beat him to it. Sai, that's not right. What's my position now? The demon ancestor mumbled all the way as he increased the height of his invisibility by another 500 meters. Luckily, these two little fellows did not notice the movement in the sky. If those two soul energy rashly swept over, I might have been exposed, and I'll have to take care of my children aside. I should think of a way to ease my relationship with my grandson. Lei Chan Tian racked his brains. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that he had missed out on too much. If he had come when he was 2 or 3 years old, he reckoned that 2 lollipops and a few hundred yuan of lucky money would have been enough to settle this dot. But now that the children had grown up and were not easy to coax, each of them was as smart as a ghost. His grandson and granddaughter did not seem to be easy to deal with. His grandson was mischievous and mischievous. He was even more cunning than an experienced person. As for his granddaughter, the great weapon that was originally used to deal with women was now useless. If he did not see wrongly, his granddaughter's body was clear and delicate. She clearly had a pure body. Furthermore, she had taken the look-preserving pill. Beauty, this super topic that women in ancient and modern times were tirelessly talking about, was already useless to her. It was meaningless. She was already at the peak, but then, what else could he do? Weapons? Forget it. These two little fellows have divine weapons in their hands. They are much stronger than my Demon King hook. Don't even mention me giving them. I just want them to give me some of the remaining materials so that I can find a chance to refine my spiritual weapons. That as for food, clothes, and toys, these two fellows spent 15 billion just for a joke they made when they were children. What did they lack? Heavenly treasures? In this aspect, I don't seem to have as much as the two of them. I can't even compare to them. The 9 heaven spirit spring water can be measured with caddies. I don't even have as much as Zhuo Changchong, and you begin to thinking over and over again. Lei Chan Tian felt even more helpless. He deeply felt that this grandfather of his was actually the only poor person in the entire family. What the fuck? Lei Chan Tian was furious. I've lived my whole life. What have I done? Demon ancestor? What demon have I become? How can I become so miserable? They sped along the way and searched. They did not let go of even the slightest trace. Looking from the sky, the whistling meteors were constantly smashing down. However, the two of them did not care at all. With their current cultivation level, even if the meteors were aimed at them, they would immediately bounce back when they were several zhang above their heads. There was no effect at all. However, these meteors that could not affect the two of them increased the difficulty of searching for traces by no less than 10,000 times. All the traces along the way had already been destroyed thousands of times in this period of time. The two of them searched all the way until they were about to reach the Thousand Extremes mountain. Then, they finally found something. Look over there. Zhuo Duo swept past. Zhuo's target was a big rock. On that rock, a sword mark was deeply engraved. It pierced through this 10,000 gene huge rock. The sword intent within was awe-inspiring, filled with a sense of decisiveness. Zhuo's eyes immediately showed waves of absent-mindedness. It was as if he had seen Qin Fanyang during class. That soul sword intent that burned like a torch soaring into the sky. After carefully looking at the deep sword mark in front of him, Zhuo Xiaoduo could not help but feel a lump in his throat. He said, "It can't be wrong. This is the sword mark left behind by Teacher Qin. The sword intent on it, I can't be wrong. I definitely can't be wrong." The sword intent of the Five Directions sword. Zhuo Xiaoyan looked at the direction of this sword intent. Then, she thought for a moment and said in surprise, "Teacher Qin is actually already at the returning profound." Before she could finish her words, she quickly retreated a few steps. She turned sideways to look for the opponent and made a sword swing. It feels like the position is about the same. However, this sword should have been sent out by Teacher Qin when he was desperately trying to break out of the encirclement. He could no longer perfectly control his strength. That's why this sword mark was left behind. At that time, such a sword break out of the encirclement must have been attacked from all sides. And this sword should only be one of the countless counterattacking swords. But it can still explain a certain problem. The direction of this sword is to the left. That is to say, at this time, Teacher Qin was escaping in front. There were pursuers behind him, and he was not intercepted head-on. Then, Zhuo Xiaoduo thought for a moment. Then, he flew out and landed 3 zhang behind Zhuo Xiaoyan. He left a footprint and then retreated 300 zhang. He imitated Qin Fanyang's speed and ran all the way. As if someone was chasing him, he swung his sword all the way. The direction of the sword was to fall. It was the Five-Direction sword that Qin Fanyang had taught him. When he reached the footprint, he suddenly swung out the Five Directions sword technique. The sword flashed and flashed, then Zhuo Xiaoduo rushed out 1,000 zhang before he stopped and turned back. How is it? It should have been like this at that time. It's almost the same. Zhuo Xiaoyan looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo's sword aura. It was exactly the same as the sword mark on the rock. She could not help but admire Zhuo Xiaoduo's memory and control of his strength. She was amazed. Zhuo Xiaoduo returned to the original location of the footprint. Then, he made 3 hypothetical movements and finally confirmed it. "It's in this direction." He pointed. "It's this way." Then, he waved his hand and put the huge rock that weighed more than 10,000 jin into his spatial ring. Then, he continued to search for traces with Zhuo Xiaoyan. Zhuo Xiaoyan knew why Zhuo Xiaoduo put away the rock. If Qin Fanyang had really passed away, then this rock might be the last trace of Qin Fanyang in this world. How could Zhuo Xiaoduo leave this stone outside to be battered by the wind and rain, slowly wearing it down? During the search, Zhuo Xiaoduo fought all the way. It was as if he had turned into his teacher Qin Fanyang at this moment. He ran, fought, broke out of the encirclement, and continued to run, fight, break out of the encirclement. Zhuo Xiaoyan observed any traces that could be observed. She verified and judged with Zhuo Xiaoduo's imitations. If the people who had chased after Qin Fanyang were here, they would definitely be shocked. Because Zhuo Xiaoduo's traces, imitations, and the final conclusion of the route was almost equivalent to Qin Fanyang being chased all over again. Chapter 1098. Apart from the first few imitations, the more he went on, the more precise his moves became. Every move was flawless and flawless. He had completely replicated everything that had happened that day. It was to the point that the footprints on the ground completely overlapped in the end. Searching like this all the way, he found the traces and found the right route. Naturally, the follow-up was much easier. As time went on, there were more and more traces of fighting on the road. Basically, there was a round of fighting every 1,000 meters or so. Teacher Qin's body movement is based on one breath. After one breath, he needs a small amount of time to take a breath. The enemy's cultivation is obviously higher than his, so when he takes a breath, the enemy immediately takes the opportunity to catch up. But all the way to the foot of the mountain, Teacher Qin is still in the front position. He hasn't really been caught up, nor has he been surrounded. When they reached the foot of the mountain, Zhuo Xiaoduo glanced at the mountain terrain and said, According to Teacher Chin's fighting experience, he should have directly jumped up here, turned around and slashed with his sword, or self-exploded a doppelganger to block the enemy, and then escaped up the mountain. As he spoke, he jumped up and looked for the second trace. When his feet landed, he stopped here with a posture of touching the ground. Here, Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes focused, because under his feet there was a dark trace that was almost invisible. Nian Nian cat. I know. Zhuo Xiaoyan waved her hand and froze the surrounding space. Then, the surrounding air was forcefully squeezed toward the dark trace below. Another force entered the mountain rock and squeezed from the inside out. As she continued to move, the color of the dark trace became more and more clear. Zhuo Xiaoduo stretched out her hand and touched it. Suddenly, there was a glaring red on her finger. Injured? Zhuo Xiaoduo could not figure it out no matter how much he thought about it. He had imitated all the battles along the way, and there were no signs of injuries or internal injuries. Although he could not say that he was at ease, there was always room for maneuver. Moreover, there were no external injuries before. Then, where did the extra injuries come from? Why was there blood? Zhuo Xiaoduo suddenly had an idea. He swayed his body and looked around. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, the other party was here. They had set up an ambush. Based on the location, the blood should have flowed out from the leg or the bottom of the trousers. However, the moment it stopped and was about to fly up, it was suddenly attacked. There are no signs of battle here, but in such a short period of time, the blood has already reached the stone below. Then, the injury it suffered at that time was definitely not light. It was the ambush here that caused Qin Laoshi to be heavily injured for the first time. Zhuo Xiaoduo gnashed his teeth in anger. Looking at a large rock on the left in front of him, it was like a screen. The person who had been lying in ambush had suddenly made his move and severely injured Qin Fangyang, just as his body landed on the ground before he could fly up. It's on the thigh. So, the enemy launched a sneak attack at such a close distance. However, if it's a weapon, it shouldn't be so long. The wound is bleeding so fast. It's obviously a penetrating wound. If it was only one side of the wound, the blood wouldn't have flowed so fast. A person's nerve reaction is very fast. They would immediately contract the muscles. So, it must be a penetrating wound. In other words, this thing penetrated Qin Laoshi's body. Could it be a hidden weapon? Zhuo Xiaoduo followed the illusion and shot out the hidden weapon. Then, he followed the direction of the hidden weapon. Finally, on the opposite side of the dark side, on a mountain rock covered with moss, he found a small hole. Smack! Zhuo Xiaoduo slammed his palm on the mountain rock. The mountain rock shattered inch by inch. 15 inches into the hole, he found a strange iron nail. It was completely black. An iron nail made of star iron, a triangular blade, a hole in the middle, a barb, a blue color, and highly toxic. What a vicious hidden weapon. Zhuo Xiaoduo gritted his teeth. Zhuo Xiaoyan's eyes were also shining. After searching here, they finally found something. This iron nail was made of star iron. It was made of star iron and stood out from the rest. It was obviously a unique hidden weapon, and this unique hidden weapon was a great clue. So Xiaoduo gritted his teeth, but he felt a little excited. Finally, there was a clue. The 4 great families of Shangjing were just being used. However, the person who hid here and launched a sneak attack was the most important. This person had such strength. If he joined forces with the people who chased them before, Qin Fangyang and Shinjido would have been killed before they could escape here. Therefore, this person was not in the same group as those people. As long as they were not in the same group, it could be ruled out. It was not those people from the 4 great families. At this time, if it was not those people from the 4 great families who attacked, then it was very likely that they were the people behind the scenes. This was very certain. The enemy's hidden weapon should have been aimed at Qin Laoshi's chest. However, Laoshi suddenly stood up at this time, so it hit his thigh. So Xiaoduo simulated it again and finally confirmed it. Then, he deduced it based on the simulation of the chase. There were a total of 5 people who chased after Qin Laoshi, and this person who was hiding in the dark is the 6th. So Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan checked the location of the hidden person for a long time. However, this place was badly damaged, and they could not see anything. After this person attacked, did he continue to attack, or did he retreat immediately? 3,000 meters up, they finally saw an unprecedentedly chaotic and tragic battlefield. Dark blood stains could be seen almost everywhere. Even though there were meteors crashing down continuously, they still could not eliminate all the traces here. He was intercepted here. The other party formed an encirclement. Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at the messy traces on the scene. Looking at the blood splattering everywhere, it was as if he could see his Laosher engaging in the most desperate battle here. There were enemies everywhere, but he still did not give up and continued to fight. That figure fighting with all his might was so clear. Here, there were still only 5 people who attacked. That is to say, the person who used the hidden weapon did not choose to continue attacking after using the hidden weapon. Instead, he immediately withdrew and left. If that's the case, it's even more obvious that this person is not from those families. Zhuo Xiaoduo confirmed this point. Finally, he felt that there was some direction in front of him. There are 5 people surrounding him from 5 directions. Obviously, all of them are injured. Here, Qin Laosher self-destructed 3 of his doppelgangers. Before he rushed up, Zhuo Xiaoduo's voice gradually became hoarse. Zhuo Xiaoyan was silent. She only reached out and held Zhuo Xiaoduo's hand tightly. She could understand Zhuo Xiaoduo's feelings. With Qin Fangyang's cultivation and strength, combined with the characteristics of the 5-direction sword, self-destructing 3 doppelgangers here was equivalent to losing half of his life. Since he still wanted to escape, it proved that the enemy's combat strength was more than half. Along the way, they continued to go up. Along the way to the peak of 7,000 meters, there was already a cliff. The entire mountain was a cliff, and below it was a white fog that rose up into the sky. This is the final battlefield. There was no battle. Qin Laosher risked his life to rush up just to jump down from here. This is something that only a warrior who has experienced hundreds of battles would understand. Jumping off a cliff, no matter how dangerous the cliff is, may not necessarily lead to death. However, dying under the enemy's sword is truly hopeless. Qin Laosher must have had this thought at that time. As long as he jumped down, as long as the cliff was deep enough, no matter what, he could buy himself some time. However, when he struggled to reach here, he was already a lamp that had run out of oil. Before that, the last 2 doppelgangers self-destructed to buy him a chance to jump down. But at that time, the last doppelganger self-destructed, coupled with the dozens of wounds on his body and the strong poison. He was almost a dead man. So Xiaoduo gritted his teeth and stood at the edge of the cliff. He muttered, but the people who were chasing after him were still worried. Before they could catch up, they threw their weapons directly and killed him. Tears fell from Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes. Until now, there was really no hope in his heart. Before this, even if he said that Qin Laosher had passed away, he told himself in his heart that there might still be a chance. However, seeing the traces along the way with his own eyes, the last trace of hope finally disappeared. In this case, even if it was him now, there was no way to survive. There was no hope of survival. What's more, there was the poisonous fog under Death Valley. With Qin Laosher's condition at that time, with his exhausted body, he would definitely die. So Xiaoduo looked at the rolling fog under the cliff and said firmly, "I want to go down." The weapons that were thrown out are also clues. And Qin Laosher's body is still down there. Zhuo Xiaoyan said quietly, "Let's go down together." Okay. The 2 stood on the cliff, standing at the position where Qin Fangyang had rushed down, and jumped down together. These 2 children are really demon ancestor Lei Changtian, who is invisible in the sky above, sighed helplessly. This death cliff, how can it be so easy to jump down? Jumping down so recklessly, should I say that you are skilled and bold, or that you are ignorant and fearless? He sighed but still followed. But before he went down, he waved his hand. What he meant was, "Go back, I'll just watch." In the distance behind him, Bai Yunduo, who was also invisible, stopped with a bitter smile. You'll just watch? If you were reliable. Madam wouldn't have specially asked me to follow you here, but so far, there was really nothing wrong here. With demon ancestor Lei Chantian, who wanted to atone for his sins, and who almost never left his grandfather's side and paid full attention here, it seemed that nothing would really happen. Instead of standing here foolishly, he'd better go back to Shangjing City to take a look. This matter was indeed strange in every way. It was the kind of development that the more he thought about it, the stranger he felt. No matter how he thought about it carefully, he felt that it was somewhat unbelievable. Zhuoxiaoduo and Zhuoxianyan floated down like two feathers. And in the current continuous state of floating down, the two were more and more surprised. Too high, too deep. Chapter 1099. This mountain peak, according to the visual estimation when they first arrived, was only about 7,000 meters high. However, they did not expect that the height of the cliff on the other side would be so different. It had far exceeded the height of the peak estimated from the front. The so-called height difference here was not simply a few hundred meters or a few thousand meters, but a multiple. It's a bit strange. The height of our fall has exceeded 14,000 meters, which is almost twice the height estimated from the outside. Zhuoxianyan whispered to Zhuoxiaoduo as they descended. Yeah. Zhuoxiaoduo looked at one side of the cliff. The other side was hidden in the thick fog, about 5,000 meters wide, and this side was like a knife, and it also showed a state of sinking. The lower they fell, the more the cliff on this side was concave. In this case, with Qin Fangyang's physical condition at that time, it was unlikely that he could move to dissipate the force. In addition, there was no obstacle in the air, so there was only one possibility for them to fall to the bottom. At the current known height, they would definitely fall into a meat patty or even a pool of meat sauce. Forget it. Let's go to the bottom of the cliff first. Zhuoxiaoduo pursed his lips. At this time, both of them had seen the strange red and yellow fog below. It was also the world-famous and insurmountable moat of Death Valley. The poisonous fog of Death Valley was a kind of poisonous fog that was known but unknown. It was famous in the world and incurable. Only Zhuoxiaoduo looked at each other and smiled. Zhuoxianyan smiled slightly and stretched out her small white hand. Zhuoxiaoduo reached out and held it. Suddenly, the two people's spiritual qi, one of water and one of fire, one of cold and one of warm, blended together in a blink of an eye. Then, the two completely different real qis, one white and one red, intertwined to form a strange pink fog, shrouding the two people's bodies. Wherever it passed, all of the poisonous mist was expelled outside of the thick pink mist. The two of them gradually went deeper into the fog layer, safely, continuing to go deeper and slowly descending. However, the further down they went, the thicker the poisonous fog became. Slowly, it reached the point where it was almost like a solid layer of clouds. Not only could it completely block one's vision, it was almost at the point where one could reach out and grab it. The two of them couldn't help but be shocked. Since the two of them dared to jump into Death Valley, they were naturally prepared. This could be seen from the confluence of ice and fire that was constructed by the two of them and could block the outside aura from penetrating. However, everything they saw in Death Valley was still far beyond their expectations. Such a thick layer of poisonous fog that was no different from a substance was never seen or heard of before. Zhuoxiaoduo's face became even more solemn. Under the invasion of such poisonous fog, the possibility of Qin Fangyang surviving after falling down was even lower. Originally, it was already infinitely close to zero. Now, the word close could be removed. 18,000 meters. Zhuoxianyan could see Zhuoxiaoduo's expression and knew what he was thinking. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on Zhuoxiaoduo's hand. She signaled that she was still beside him. You have to calm down. Zhuoxiaoduo nodded and held her hand with a little force. As if their hearts were connected, both of them felt at ease. The two of them maintained their current state and continued to descend for more than 5,000 meters. Finally, they saw the ground below. Well, it was not appropriate to say that it was the ground below. That was because there was a huge swamp below. As far as the eye could see, the entire bottom of the canyon was filled with swamps. Looking around, there was actually no solid ground to step on. It was all swamp mud of unknown depth, and on the ground, there was a shallow layer of water of unknown color. So Xiaoyan thought and took out a huge piece of low-grade jade of astral souls from the space ring and threw it down. With a poof, the huge jade of astral souls fell into the swamp, causing mud to splatter everywhere. Then, the two of them were shocked to discover that the outer layer of the extremely sturdy jade of astral souls was emitting thick smoke. It was in a state of rapid corrosion. What was worse was that the jade of astral souls was sinking rapidly along with the bubbles. In the blink of an eye, the top of the jade of astral souls had disappeared. After a while, bubbles started to appear in all directions in the swamp, as if in response. The moment the bubbles burst, poisonous fog appeared and floated upwards. This was probably the source of the poisonous fog that had almost solidified above them. If one were to look at the visual effect, one would see countless colorful bubbles flying upwards if the sun shone on them. It was no different from the soap bubbles made by children. It had a strange and dreamy beauty. However, the destructive power contained within it was so terrifying that it could devour all living things and overturn all living beings. Xiaoduo stared blankly. His lips were trembling and his eyes were gradually turning red. Xiaoyan sighed softly. She hugged Xiaoduo and patted his shoulder comfortingly. Xiaoyan understood Xiaoduo's feelings very well. Xiaoduo might have felt a little lucky when he saw the swamp. But after considering the height of more than 20,000 meters, the poisonous fog in the middle of the swamp that was almost 10,000 meters thick, and the bottomless poisonous swamp that could swallow all living things, there was really no hope for Qin Fangyang to survive if he jumped down. What's more, once he fell into the swamp, he wouldn't even be able to collect his corpse. He would definitely be corroded and melted the moment he fell into the swamp. Not even his bones would be left behind, that at the moment when the astral souls fell into the swamp and smashed into the swamp. Xiaoyan looked on in surprise. At the moment when Xiaoduo's spirit collapsed, there seemed to be a faint wave of spiritual power that fluctuated in this direction, but it disappeared immediately. The swamp at the bottom completely destroyed, the only hope left in Xiaoduo's heart. Xiaoduo felt that his emotions were on the verge of collapse. At this moment, he felt that something was amiss, but it was too subtle. It was like an ant's spiritual energy being stirred that at this moment, Xiaoduo couldn't care less about these details. His emotions were on the verge of collapse. He suddenly shouted, "Even if he died, what about his bones? Will there really be no bones left?" Before his voice died away, he suddenly took out the 9-9 cat hammer and smashed it down in the air with a bang. His ferocious hammer strike was so powerful that it was unimaginable and appalling. Suddenly, a whirlpool with a radius of several feet appeared in the swamp in front of him. Countless amounts of poisonous water and venom surged into the air. At this moment, it was as if the Milky Way was pouring down. Xiaoduo and Xiaoyan stared at the huge pit that was created. It was at least 1,000 meters deep, but they still couldn't see the bottom. At the bottom, there was still a thin layer of mud, and there was nothing in the muddy soup that splashed up. It wasn't just that Xiaoduo didn't have what he had been longing for. It was that other than the poison, there was nothing else. Everything that fell into the swamp had really melted away. Xiaoduo gritted his teeth and looked at the venom splashing down. He only felt hatred in his chest. Suddenly, he took out a few empty space rings and some bottles and tried to fill them with the venom. Unfortunately, the moment those bottles came into contact with the venom, they were in a state of collapse and melted in the blink of an eye. Xiaoduo even tried to seize the opportunity to forcibly store the jade bottles and venom that were about to collapse into the space ring. But in just a moment, even the space ring was melted away. "What are you doing?" Xiaoyan asked in surprise. "They let my teacher have a taste of this. Naturally, I have to let them have a taste of this too." So Xiaoduo didn't give up and kept trying. He even took out the two used earth hair dryers and started to compress the poisonous fog inside. The earth hair dryers were indeed the most poisonous devices in the world produced by the non-poisonous shaman. They could actually store this kind of poisonous fog. I don't have the patience to throw them all here. I can only take some of the things here out. At this moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo's face showed an unprecedented ferocity. Zhuo Xiaoduo had already dismantled the non-poisonous shaman's earth hair dryer. However, the true value of the earth hair dryer was the poisonous fog. The earth hair dryer itself was made of precious materials, and its structure was not repeated. At this moment, it was compressing the poisonous fog in the poison valley, and it was unusually smooth. After several attempts, Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that the poisonous fog in front of him wasn't much worse than the original earth hair dryer, even if it wasn't as good as it was. Or, the earth hair dryer could be used repeatedly. The poisonous fog in this realm was enough to be replenished many times. Just you wait. I will find all of you murderers and then spray this poisonous fog in your faces and mouths. When these are used up, I will come back for more. I will let you have your fill. Zhuo Xiaoyan was dumbfounded as she watched Zhuo Xiaoduo compress the poisonous fog. In just a moment, the poisonous fog that was no less than 1,000 feet in radius was compressed into the Zhao's things. She could not help but be stunned. As the poisonous fog here was cleared, it was quickly replenished from other places. Zhuo Xiaoduo carefully put away the two earth hair dryers and said with a dark face, "Let's go." Zhuo Xiaoyan nodded and warned, "You have to keep it well. If this thing is leaked, it's okay. It was more dangerous than this before. This thing is very safe." The two of them once again activated their martial arts. Water and fire flowed together and rose up. Zhuo Xiaoyan looked at the thick white fog that was close at hand and could not help but say, "If the poisonous fog here spreads out, I'm afraid that the surrounding tens of thousands of miles will become a ghost town." Why didn't this poisonous fog spread out? Zhuo Xiaoyan's unintentional words made Zhuo Xiaoduo's whole body tremble. His mind was spinning rapidly. That's right, this mist-like thing was the least weighty. Since it originated from the bottom, as long as there was space above, it could gradually spread. But why did this poisonous fog stop at the halfway point of the mountain and not go up? Not to mention the mountains and cliffs near Death Valley. Even the sky above Death Valley was completely free of poison. This went against common sense. Then what on earth was it that could seal the poisonous fog? Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes were gradually filled with uncertainty. He said, "Nian Mao, when you came down just now, did you feel the aura of other souls? My wrist is a little swollen. I went for acupuncture." Begging for a voice vote. Chapter 1100. Zhuo Xiaoyan was stunned. "No. Really? Not at all. Really? Then what about the fluctuation of spiritual sense?" "Not at all." Zhuo Xiaoduo frowned. Was it just my imagination? He tried to recall carefully. It seemed that there was an extremely small amount of spiritual power that flashed past. Zhuo Xiaoduo was sure. This was definitely not the spiritual power of a human. If this spiritual power was controlled by someone, then this person's cultivation must have reached an unparalleled level. It was so much so that even Elder Wan in the Tianling forest, as well as Sire Shui, didn't possess such meticulous spiritual energy. Zhuo Xiaoduo flew up with Zhuo Xiaoyan while staying close to the cliff. He carefully looked for any abnormalities on the cliff. Were there any holes or shallow areas? Perhaps there was some attractive hole that sucked Qin Fanyang in. However, they did not find anything even when they were almost out of the poisonous fog. Zhuo Xiaoduo finally let go of the last bit of luck and could not help but feel disappointed. "I didn't find anything. I didn't even find the swords that the enemy threw down. They must have been swallowed and melted by the swamp." Zhuo Xiaoduo was disappointed and returned with Zhuo Xiaoyan. After the two of them left, on the ground of the swamp, not far from where the two of them were standing, the space suddenly changed and a huge hole appeared out of thin air. This hole was thousands of meters wide and was more than enough to accommodate an aircraft carrier a moment later. A humongous head silently stretched out. This head was at least the size of 7 or 8 train engines. A pair of eyes rolled around. It looked up. Just one of its eyes was almost the size of a house. The swamp area seemed to be boiling and rolling, with gurgling waves hundreds of meters high. In the next moment, a huge tail rolled in the swamp, like a person who had slept for a long time, suddenly stretching. The countless bubbles popped up and burst, and the poisonous fog in the sky became denser. A muffled voice murmured, "That little thing almost found me just now. It's quite sharp. That was close." His huge eyeballs rolled up and revealed an expression of lingering fear. However, if this look was seen by others, most of the people in Shangjing City would be scared to death. The ancestor said that I can't be discovered by anyone. Once I'm discovered, it will be my end. The voice murmured, "But those two little things are obviously so weak. Can they really threaten me?" This huge monster that suddenly appeared had 2 strange horns on its head. It murmured, "Whatever, I don't care." What the ancestor said must be true. I just don't know when the ancestor will come back. I'm bored to death here. It wagged its tail gloomily. Then it rolled its eyes even more gloomily and turned its head to look at its side. It was a person who was covered in wounds and almost cut into pieces. He quietly lay beside the monster. His body was not even as big as the fingernails on the monster's claws. But what should I do about this? The monster looked at the person lying on the ground in distress. The ancestor said that I can't kill. I can't see anyone. I haven't killed anyone before. Even the poisonous gas is blocked by the power of the inner core. I can't see anyone. What should I do? This person was still alive when he fell from the sky. Does this count as breaking the precepts? How depressing. Can't I yawn at any time? Why do I have to yawn at that time? The monster was extremely depressed. This little thing is not good either. How could it fall into my mouth so coincidentally? I'm speechless. If I didn't yawn, this little thing would have fallen to his death, drowned, or poisoned. It has nothing to do with me. How could it fall into my mouth so coincidentally? Now, if he dies, it has something to do with me. Why is this little thing involved with such a strong heavenly fate? If this heavenly fate backfires, I can't bear it. What should I do? It used its little fingernails to carefully turn the person lying quietly on the ground and sighed. But the injuries on this little thing's body are too serious. Why should I bear the karma of such a person who is bound to die if he dies in my place? Is there any place in this world that is reasonable? If I want to keep this guy alive, I have to use the power of my inner core. Damn it, I'm at a disadvantage. Why am I so unlucky? Hasn't it always been that whoever meets me is unlucky? Why is it that I'm unlucky to meet one after tens of thousands of years? The monster sighed and muttered to itself. Looking at this person who was about to fall apart and whose life force was getting weaker and weaker, it reluctantly stretched its head and dripped a drop of saliva into this person's mouth. Let's maintain it for now. If he completely survives, won't he see me? Once he sees me, won't it mean that I've been seen? If I've been seen, will it mean that I've broken the oath? If I break the oath, won't I be even more unlucky? A drop of the monster's saliva was equivalent to the person lying on the ground taking a bath. His entire body was soaked. Too small. The monster sighed. You're lucky. This is the water of my inner core. Bored to death, it raised its head and looked at the huge amount of poisonous fog that it had created over the years. In its huge eyes, there was an indescribable desire. When can I go out and play freely? Ancestor, when will my benefactor come? I've waited for so many years. Do you know, the flowers have withered. It's so hard. On one hand, I'm not allowed to see anyone. On the other hand, you said that my benefactor will come. If I don't see anyone, how can there be a benefactor? Boo-hoo. After feeling sorry for itself for a long time, it suddenly thought of something. It lowered its head. Looking at the person lying on the ground, it was bewildered. He was bewildered. This little thing can't be my benefactor, right? If this guy is my benefactor, does it mean that I can go out? The monster's 2 big eyes blinked and suddenly became excited. It lowered its head and looked at the tattered person on the ground. The saliva in its mouth dripped to 375 meters. Benefactor. You have to be my benefactor. I'm about to suffocate to death. Don't you have to be my benefactor too? So Xiaoduo and Zhua Xiaonian ascended to the top of the mountain dejectedly. Both of them were a little dejected. They had mobilized so many people and tired themselves out all the way. Both of them felt that they had gained nothing. They only gained one iron nail. As for the poisonous fog that's what Xiaoduo collected, both of them didn't feel that it was much of a gain. It was just a little bit of poison. What was the use of it? Whether it was with Xiaoduo or with Xiaonian, they had always collected a lot of things. They didn't care about this little thing at all. Lei Changtian followed closely behind and ascended from below. He didn't go to the bottom. He protected them from afar in the poisonous fog. Seeing this thick poisonous fog, Lord Demon Ancestor wanted to collect some for backup at the first moment. If he encountered a large-scale battle formation of enemies that he couldn't deal with, this thing was simply a necessary weapon in battle. When the time came that it would melt a large area in an instant. What a good thing. However, Lord Demon Ancestor didn't have this kind of equipment. He could only look at it enviously. Hearing that these two treasures weren't even in his eyes, he couldn't help but feel a toothache. I don't know what to say. With this thing, it can guarantee that you can keep your life even if you're surrounded by millions of demons. You actually don't think of it as a toy. But I can't collect it at all. I'm so angry that my liver hurts. Sigh. Those who really know and understand good things can't get good things. On the contrary, those who don't know anything are so lucky. Lei Changtian looked up at the sky and sighed. When I was young, I played Golden Flower with Chang and the others. After a while, I would catch 3 leopards. They encouraged me to take the initiative to open my cards. When I understood that it was the biggest, I didn't even play Golden Flower anymore, let alone leopards. Every time I played, I lost so much that I lost my underwear. I suspect that those guys cheated. I guess what Chang cheated. First, he made me addicted, then he made me lose. Finally, I gave him an IOU. Later, the IOU was as thick as a palm. He seduced my daughter. I've been smart all my life, but I'm stupid now. Sigh. The past is like smoke. It's not worth mentioning. Zhua Xiaoduo and Lei Changtian shot straight up from the bottom of the cliff like a rocket. They rushed straight into the air and then slowly descended. Their chi surged, completely dispersing the remaining poisonous fog in the surroundings. Then, the duo stared blankly, because in front of the duo, there were actually 5 black-clothed masked men standing quietly at the edge of the cliff. Many pairs of bright eyes looked at the two of them. Their gazes were full of interest, as well as indescribable cruelty. So, Xiaoduo, have you discovered anything after entering the bottom of the cliff? The black-clothed man in the middle, his black robe fluttering in a long wind high in the sky. His voice was like the sound of metal clashing, sonorous and powerful. So Xiaoduo stopped in midair and narrowed his eyes. Who are you people? You actually dare to block my way here? Don't tell me you haven't heard of the great name of Iron Fist Young Masters Xiaoduo? So Xiaoduo snorted. Iron Fist Young Master, he, the leader of the black-clothed men, smiled faintly. Don't play Zhao's tricks in front of me. You, Zhua Xiaoduo, are known as the Iron Fist Young Master, but your true ability is your sword. The black-clothed man's eyes had a playful look. He said faintly, Nimble cat sword. I'm right, aren't I? I'm taking a leave of absence today. I'm feeling very down. My language teacher passed away, so I have to go back. It's very sad. I still remember that year when my teacher finished reading my essay on the podium. He sighed and said, this child could be a writer in the future. When I was at my wit's end, this sentence supported my online literature career that I'm sorry for today. Brothers and sisters. Chapter 1101. The eyes of the other 4 masked men in black also flashed with mockery. This kid actually wants to show off his cleverness in front of us Jianghu veterans? Trying to surprise us with a sword at a crucial moment? These are all leftovers from our games. Can your title of Iron Fist Young Master be used to deceive us? Your hidden weapons and small gourds are also useless. The leader of the masked men in black looked coldly as was Xiaoduo, like a cat toying with a mouse. Once again, he pointed out one of Zhuo Xiaoduo's trump cards. Childish. The five of them laughed at the same time. Momentum surged. An inexplicable momentum suddenly spread out. It was as vast as the sky, as strong as the mountains, as steady as the earth, and as vast as the sky. The momentum suddenly increased and surged in the air. Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan looked at each other, a trace of caution in their eyes. Momentum. The momentum of these five people was already very strong. Even though it was just one of them, the momentum that belonged to flying in the sky was already as strong as a mountain. At this moment, the momentum of these five people was linked together into one, as if they were inseparable from the vast sky and the earth. Vast, broad, and unshakable. But now, at this moment, the five of them stood side by side on the cliff. Their meaning was simple and straightforward. Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan wanted to land, and they were not happy to see it. Zhuo Xiaoyan stood in the air, her white robe fluttering in the wind. Her voice was cold and clear. So what if you know our movements like the back of your hand? I have to thank all of you for your actions. Since you've been hiding and not moving, no matter how much I investigate, I can't find your whereabouts. Your ability to hide your tracks is really amazing. You suddenly appeared, but gave me a chance to face you directly. However, I'm very curious. Why did all of you come out so openly this time? So Xiaoyan's status in the Nine Heavens Pavilion was no longer what it used to be. Although she still spoke to Zhuo Xiaoduo's parents in the same tone as before, when facing outsiders, her bearing as a superior was naturally revealed. Her words were majestic and awe-inspiring. Her question was exactly what Zhuo Xiaoduo was curious about. Previously, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't find anything. Their clues were almost completely cut off. How did it come out on its own this time? This action left a trace, and it was very likely that the previously broken clues were once again connected. We naturally have our reasons for coming out. The eyes of the leader of the masked men flickered. Although it was very subtle, Zhuo Xiaoduo could still see a flash of annoyance in her eyes. Annoyed? Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned. Why should he be upset? The other party's series of actions could be said to be flawless, without any flaws. Moreover, it was unexpected and meticulous. Including the current action, it was far beyond the two of them. Then, why should he be upset? The only reason for this was that Zhuo Xiaoduo was deep in thought. Then, he said indifferently, "You guys saw me leaving the city and were afraid that I would run away? That's why he took action in advance." The leader of the masked men snorted. "You're still wet behind the ears. You think too highly of yourself." So as Xiaoduo said with a smile, "There's no need to quibble. If you weren't afraid that I would run away, why would you follow me here? Based on what you've done before, how could you reveal your flaws so easily?" At this moment, his brain was working vigorously. He said, "So your target is really me. You're just waiting to finish me off to complete your mission? Or should I say, only by finishing me off can you be considered to have completed your mission?" The eyes of the five masked men in black did not change. They just looked at him coldly. "No, that's not right either. You guys spent so much effort, but the true intention in your bones was to lead me to Shangjing." So Xiaoduo thought and said, "But based on your huge power and strength, if you just wanted to kill me, why did you have to lead me to Shangjing? So many twists and turns, so much time and effort. But you guys just had to set up such a trap. Why is that? It's very thought-provoking. You'd rather do things in the most troublesome way to lead me to Shangjing? After I arrived, you guys could still bide your time and remain calm. But when I left the city, you guys became anxious and didn't hesitate to show up for a while." Zhuo Xiaoduo smiled meaningfully. "Tell me, your many actions are thought-provoking?" The five of them still did not say a word, but their eyes were getting colder and colder. "Then can I understand that? Because of a special reason, you need to target me and kill me. But to kill me, you need to do it in a suitable place. The suitable place you pre-said is Shangjing? You have to kill me in Shangjing? is what Xiao Duo murmured. If you use this as an inference, you can't let me die outside of Shangjing. You should want to capture me alive and use me to do something in Shangjing. And for this matter, why didn't you do it earlier or later? Why did you choose to do it at this time? Is it because the time is not right? Or maybe the other conditions are not right, but you took the initiative to jump out now. It can only be that the time is almost right. Are you afraid that I'll run away? So you don't dare to wait any longer? What if I go too far away and the time is difficult to adjust? Then your plan can't be carried out. This should be the most intuitive reason, right? So Xiao Duo let out a long breath and said, I think I seem to have understood something. The leader of the black-clothed men said lightly, What do you understand? What can you understand? So Xiao Duo said lightly, As long as you trace the matter back to its origin, you will naturally understand. There's only one big thing that is about to happen recently. And this thing is the dragons fighting for the heritage. My teacher Qin was not schemed against for the quota of the dragons fighting for the heritage. He was schemed against because I was of some use to the dragons fighting for the heritage. What Xiao Duo's face showed a thoughtful expression. But what use do I have to the dragons fighting for the heritage? Is it worth it for you to plot against me? Teacher Qin didn't reveal anything about the dragons fighting for the heritage to me before. Before I arrived in Shangjing, I knew very little about the so-called dragons fighting for the heritage. The eyes of the black-clothed masked man did not waver. He just looked at Xiao Duo coldly. No matter what you guessed or know, it is meaningless to you. So Xiao Duo, your life will end today. So Xiao Duo laughed and said, At least tens of thousands of people have said this to me before, but until today, I am still alive and well. On the contrary, the people who said these words are already dead. The black-clothed masked man half closed his eyes and said deeply, Who will die? So Xiao Duo, you will know. You will know soon. So Xiao Duo smiled and nodded. Of course. As long as you make a move, everything will be clear. But why are you still not moving? Why are you still standing there like a wooden stake? The black-clothed masked man's leader said lightly, The road to the underworld is long, lonely, and infinitely desolate. Once you step on that road, there will not be so many people to talk to you anymore. So Xiao Duo, are you in such a hurry to be on your way? So Xiao Duo said admiringly, Your Excellency, you even know the feeling of stepping on a road to the underworld so clearly. It seems that you must have a lot of experience. You are so old. It is not surprising that you have such experience. But I am curious, who gave you this experience? Your father? Your mother? Your wife? Your son? Or your whole family has been gone for generations? The black-clothed masked man's eyes emitted a bloody light, and he said word by word, So Xiao Duo, you will pay for what you said. Next to him, a black-clothed masked man looked at Zhuo Xiaoyan, whose clothes were fluttering in the air, licked his lips, and said, Brothers, I don't care how you deal with this kid, but I have to taste this spiritual goddess first. Next to him, several black-clothed masked men laughed together. Not only you have to taste her, all of us have to taste her. At most, we will let you have the first taste. Zhuo Xiaoyan's eyes became colder and colder. Zhuo Xiao was killing intent suddenly rose, unprecedentedly fierce and cold. If so, what are you waiting for? Zhuo Xiao Duo stretched out his hand, and the cat spirit sword was already in his hand, shining with cold light. Since you also know that my swordsmanship is unparalleled, today I will use this sword to send you on your way, and let you know that my reputation is not in vain. The five of them were naturally not in a hurry. They had the advantage in numbers, tyrannical strength, and had their feet on the ground, without any losses. On the other hand, Zhuo Xiao Duo and Zhuo Xiaoyan had been standing in the air and had just climbed up from the cliff, so their losses were definitely not small. The longer this stalemate dragged on, the more advantageous it would be for them. Although they were all full of confidence, everyone was very clear in their hearts. No matter which one, the young boy and girl in front of them, their battle strength could not be underestimated, especially this spiritual goddess, who had already become a legend in the whole of Shangjing City. It was said that many Sky Soar realm experts had fallen in her hands. The strength of this woman's battle prowess, coupled with her current age, was truly shocking. If not for this, why would so many Sky Soar realm experts be dispatched this time to kill her? Suddenly, the cold air in the air intensified. An extremely cold aura suddenly appeared, instantly covering the entire mountain peak. So Xiaonian's extremely cold aura suddenly spread out, and the Spirit Snatcher sword flashed with a cold light, sword chi filling the sky. Just a moment ago, Xiaonian and Xiaoduo had already come up with a countermeasure, or rather, a tacit understanding. At this time, the other party, who did not know Xiaoduo's true battle strength, was wary of Xiaonian, which was more reasonable. Since that was the case, why not let Xiaonian take the lead? By attracting the enemy's battle strength, Xiaoduo, who had reserved his strength and trump cards, could find an opportunity to break through the enemy's gap. Sister Nian, you deal with 4, I'll help you hold back 1. Find an opportunity to stand on the cliff, then wait for an opportunity to break through. Xiaoduo shouted. Okay. Xiaonian's eyes were cold, and the Spirit Snatcher sword flashed, covering the entire mountain peak in ice and snow. Originally, I wanted to delay the other party's real purpose, but seeing that everyone doesn't understand, there's no point in keeping them in suspense. Chapter 11:02. As the cold light covered the sky and covered the earth, the 5 people's expressions were still disdainful, but their eyes were solemn. Although they were insulting the other party as much as possible, hoping to exhaust the other party's mental strength to the greatest extent and disrupt the other party's mentality. However, they didn't dare to underestimate the combat strength of the spiritual thought goddess at all. They knew one thing very well. If it was a one-on-one battle, they might be the one to be killed. Absolute chill, freezing for an instant. This was not a joke. It was a fact that had been proven through battle results over and over again. This so-called instant was not just a description of speed, but a deeper meaning was that even time and space could be frozen. Facing such an enemy, even if the other party's realm was a full level lower, her combat strength was definitely not to be underestimated, and her lethality was definitely considerable. In order to be safe, they had information and research on almost every battle since the spiritual thought goddess entered the 9 Heavens Pavilion, especially during the period when she ascended to the nascent profound. The general conclusion they came to after brainstorming was that if this spiritual thought goddess broke through to the Ascension realm, they would at least need to send out a Tao integration expert to deal with her. Just based on the level of strength she displayed her last attack, an ordinary Ascension expert would not be able to deal with her. And this so-called ordinary Ascension expert referred to those above the mid-level Ascension realm or even the high-level Ascension realm. There is a need to explain a little here. Those who were suppressed at the peak of the nascent profound realm did not break through to the Ascension realm more than 3 times were considered ordinary Ascension experts. Those who ascended to the Ascension realm basically did not go through the suppression of true Yuan, nor did they achieve it through external forces. This realm was originally a realm that external forces could not reach. Those who could reach this realm were all former so-called geniuses. This was the lower limit. 3 to 6 times belonged to the Ascension realm, the geniuses of geniuses. At the very least, they had to be at this level to have the possibility of advancing further. Of course, it was only a possibility. 6 to 9 times basically belonged to the legendary Ascension realm experts. There is a more appropriate way to describe them: heavenly king seedlings. In other words, those who suppressed 6 to 9 times to break through to the Ascension realm had a relatively higher chance of reaching the heavenly king level in the future. The more they suppressed, the higher the limit, and the higher the chance of reaching the heavenly king level. Therefore, there was a fundamental difference between Ascension and Ascension. Even if they were both at the peak of the Ascension realm, the difference in strength could be as great as heaven and earth. Some could even crush another to death with their aura alone, or one move to determine life and death. This kind of thing, although mysterious, was actually very common. However, it was within reason. And this time, the ones sent to deal with Zhuo and Zhuo were all Sky Soar Realm geniuses. Furthermore, all 5 of them were at the pinnacle of Sky Soar Realm. The root of this battle was naturally to target Zhuo. However, if they wanted to target Zhuo, they couldn't avoid Zhuo. Therefore, in reality, these people were here to target Zhuo. As for Zhuo, a mere junior, sending out one was already too much. Cold light flashed, and the ground froze. Zhuo spirit snatcher instantly slashed 400 times. Ding, ding, ding. The sword tip collided with the weapons of the 4 enemies for a total of 400 times. Zhuo was actually attacking 4 Pinnacle Sky Soar Realm experts at the same time. The moment she started, the scene became extremely intense. The 4 of them didn't dare to be negligent. They raised their spirits and used all their strength to block the attacks while also preparing to counterattack. However, the moment the sharp sword tip came into contact with their weapons, the 4 of them felt a bone-chilling coldness seeping into their palms, wrists, and meridians from their weapons. The primordial yang qi in their dantians quickly rose to disperse the coldness. However, they still couldn't help but shiver. They couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts. If they hadn't made preparations beforehand, they might not have been able to take down this lass. The 4 of them were of the same mind. They exerted their strength together and didn't retreat an inch. Their feet were like nails that were nailed to the edge of the cliff. The abnormally strong force sent Zhuo flying. These people had clearly made up their minds to prevent her from flying up the cliff. As long as this continued, no matter how talented she was, she would only be exhausted if she continued to float in the air for a long time. The 4 experts were in no hurry to take down Zhuo in one go. If they went to the extreme, they would definitely have to pay a price. Moreover, it was very likely that the price would be very heavy. It might even cost 2 lives or their futures. However, such a price was too heavy. They might as well slowly grind it out. Zhuo body was agile and graceful. She retreated and advanced as soon as she touched them. She was like a phantom, constantly attacking from all directions. It was as if she didn't care about the consumption of her spiritual energy at all. Although the 4 of them didn't understand why this goddess of spiritual thoughts was so inexperienced in battle and only knew how to attack like a boorish man, she didn't know that this situation was exactly what they wanted. They were frantically attacking and exhausting their spiritual energy. From beginning to end, they maintained a calm situation where 2 of them were attacking with all their might, while the other 2 were conserving their spiritual energy. How could they not win if they fought steadily? After all, she's still inexperienced. This little girl is overconfident in her strength. She doesn't know when to advance or retreat. She doesn't understand the true mystery of tactics. Although the 4 of them were shocked by Zhuo sharp offensive, there was no lack of disdain in their hearts. On the other side, the one who was fighting Zhuo alone had already gained the upper hand. He was beating Zhuo until he was staggering and battered. Zhuo's cat's spirit sword and various hidden weapons were endless and wonderful. He tried his best to seize the edge of the cliff and gain a foothold. However, in the face of the opponent's absolute strength, he was in an awkward situation where he couldn't do anything at all. He didn't know how many of the various jade hidden weapons that made him famous had flown out. However, the situation this time was fundamentally different from the past. There was a great disparity in strength. In the end, the opponent didn't even try to dodge. Even if he was hit, he would only feel a slight pain on his body. Zhuo's hidden weapons were simply unable to break through the opponent's protective spiritual energy. They were simply too small and too weak. Zhuo's face was filled with anxiety. He was using the same move that made him famous, the flaming sun of the flaming sun scripture, to the extreme. His entire body was like a small sun, dancing continuously. The cold sword light was like the true flames of the sun, filling the sky with flowing clouds. The power of this move couldn't be said to be very strong. Even the Skysoar realm expert who had suppressed Zhuo to the point of being at an absolute disadvantage was full of praise in his heart. As expected of the continent's #1 genius. At such a young age, he had already reached the returning profound realm. Although he was suppressed, he wasn't willing to give up. In fact, he was far from collapsing and was still fighting tenaciously. With this kind of performance, whether it was cultivation, strength, mentality, or even fighting spirit, every aspect was first class. If he was able to fight with him on the ground, his attack power and lethality would probably increase by another level. At that time, he might not be able to take him down. At the very least, if Zhuo wanted to take advantage of the opening to escape, he might not be able to control the situation. There was no place that he could grab. The sword light suddenly changed from a drizzle to a torrential downpour. It was like a flash flood, with huge waves surging to the sky. The power was getting crazier and crazier. Countless shadows of hidden weapons flew out from all kinds of tricky angles, using all kinds of methods to attack. This generation's genius is indeed worthy of his reputation. It's a pity that he has reached the point of exhaustion. As the saying goes, the first drum builds up the spirit, the second will weaken, and the third will be exhausted. If he can't take down his opponent in this final battle, he will only exhaust his strength. How can he continue? The Skysoar realm expert became more and more spirited. While praising in his heart, he didn't show the slightest bit of negligence. Even though he felt that he had the entire situation under control and had the absolute upper hand, he couldn't afford to slack off in this kind of situation. As someone who boasted that he had the entire situation under control, he was the one who dared to be distracted the most at this moment. Comparing the two, he realized that Zhuo's battle experience was much richer than the spiritual thought goddess beside him. In other words, if the spiritual thought goddess had such battle experience and reacted at the last minute, perhaps she really wouldn't be able to keep him here today. Countless hidden weapons converged into a great river. The torrential downpour of pear blossoms was everywhere. Even a small gourd under his feet would mysteriously explode. Good technique, really good technique. The Skysoar realm expert brandished his long sword to protect himself. He said indifferently, "Unfortunately, in the face of absolute strength, your techniques are useless. After all, they're just small tricks that can't be used in public." Zhuo was sweating profusely. He glared at the Skysoar realm expert fiercely. Whether it's useful or not, no one knows until the end. In this life, you and I are absolutely irreconcilable. It's a pity that your life ends today. Old bastard, who are you guys? Why are you deliberately targeting me? Zhuo was sweating profusely. His eyes were red, but he was still waving his sword with all his might. Although he was anxious, his swordsmanship wasn't messed up at all. After hundreds of crazy collisions, Zhuo let out a loud cry and flew out like a kite with a broken string. On the other side, Zhuo was also sent flying backward. Both of them were repelled at the same time. The 5 people looked at each other, but it was a warning to each other. Be careful of tricks. Just as expected, Zhuo was sent flying backward. Zhuo followed closely behind. Then, in the air, she landed on Zhuo with one foot. Now that she had a chance to recover, she exhaled a mouthful of turbid qi, took a deep breath, and swallowed a handful of elixirs. Zhuo fell after being stepped on by Zhuo. Carrying Zhuo, the two of them quickly descended from the cliff. When this scene fell into the eyes of the 5 people above, their eyes all narrowed, and they secretly knew that things were not good. This move was out of everyone's expectations. Both of them were in the air, and both of them were using each other as leverage. It was a clever move. Although the one being leveraged would lose a lot of energy in an instant, it was an excellent way to deal with the current extreme situation. With the foundation of both of them, just a moment of recovery was enough to give them a lot of leeway. As expected of a combat genius. Chapter 11:03. The reality was just as the 5 of them had predicted. When the 2 of them flew up again, it was Xiao Duo who was on top. Obviously, after Zhuxianyan had used the same method to release the turbid qi in her chest, Xiao Duo had done the same thing. By the time the two of them flew back up, they had already recovered to their peak condition. The battle started again and continued. However, the 5 people above didn't panic at all. Even if you can use this method to struggle at death's door and continue this battle of trapped beasts, can you do this forever? How many times could he recover like this? It had to be known that doing this was not without loss. Moreover, what was lost was the source. The so-called recovery, the so-called spirit and vitality, was actually a loss of one's life essence, a loss of the upper limit of one's foundation. After the two of them flew out, they continued to fight according to their original plan. The battle became more and more intense. They were sent flying several times in a row, and then they borrowed each other's strength to charge up. The 5 of them fought steadily and unhurriedly. After a few attacks, they gradually formed a clear boundary. The 4 of them were fully focused on dealing with Zhuxianyan because they found that the cold power of the spiritual thought goddess's attacks was getting stronger and stronger. Zhuxianyan's face gradually turned pale. He was clearly burning his source energy. Seeing the danger of the battle, he had no choice but to go to the extreme. In that case, he definitely couldn't let her rush up. He had to keep his feet on the ground. This would be the most crucial moment in this battle. On the other hand, Zhuo Xiaoduo's situation was just as the previous contestants had predicted. His attack power had dropped, and it was getting weaker and weaker. Now, it looked like his attack was getting more ferocious, but the purity of his power was showing a real decline. They didn't discover it, or rather, they discovered it, but they didn't care. His original standing position was gradually losing its shape. The 4 of them gathered together and faced the northeast, working together to attack Zhuxianyan. On the other side, there was a lone person who had distanced himself from the 4 of them by about 3 meters. Furthermore, he was facing the southeast and was resisting Xiaoduo alone. After an hour-long battle, everyone felt that they had a good understanding of each other's opponents. As long as they continued to fight steadily and maintain the current situation, everyone was confident that they could take down their opponents within 10 minutes. At this point, with everyone's thousands of years of battle experience, the 2 juniors in front of them were already in the bag. Even if it had wings, it would be difficult for it to fly, and it would not be able to fly out of his palm. However, the more it was like this, the more he was unwilling to pay the price. For example, a veteran fisherman wouldn't be in a hurry to catch a fish after it was hooked. If he acted too hastily, it might cause the tangent to be unhooked. The proper thing to do was to slip away until the fish flipped over and calmly enter the cage. In their eyes, Xiaoduo and Zhuxianyan were already fishes on the hook. He was calm, confident, and full of confidence. No matter how much the fish struggled, I held onto the fishing rod tightly. After a few more minutes, everything would be under our control. Even the 5 of them began to release their spiritual power, aura, and divine sense at the same time, slowly seeping down the cliff bit by bit. This entire space was woven into a huge net, leaving no loopholes at all. Want to run? Want to escape? Impossible. As time went on, Xiaoduo's situation became more and more difficult. It became more and more difficult to continue, and they were in imminent danger. The 2 of them were panting and sweating profusely, and it seemed that they would not be able to hold on any longer. Everyone knew that the final moment of this battle was coming. The 5 masked men in black saw that victory was in their hands, but they remained calm, and each of them was fully prepared. The large net that surrounded Xiaoduo and Zhuxianyan was formed majestically, and they were on guard at all times. As long as there were no accidents, this battle would inevitably become a textbook battle. The 5 of them besieged 2 juniors, and they were a whole realm higher than the other party. It was obvious that they were bullying the weak, but why did they still fight so steadily? How could they have the nerve to say that this battle would become a textbook battle? How could there be such shameless people in this world? Come, let me tell you in detail. This difference was not about being shameless, nor was it about bullying the weak, but It was about the difference between an experienced person and a hothead. Why? Naturally, it was because of the word genius. Why did they have to fight like this to deal with geniuses? Because another loud bang resounded. So Xiaoduo let out a scream, and Zhuxianyan let out a muffled groan. The two of them staggered and rolled as they were sent flying. Similar situations had happened several times, but this time, the leader of the masked men in black's eyes flashed, and he shouted, "Attack!" The previous few times when Xiaoduo and Zhuxianyan retreated, he remained unmoved and only observed, fearing that there might be a trap. However, after a few similar situations, he was finally sure. It was fine. The other party was really an arrow at the end of its flight. In this world, there was no profound recapture realm cultivator who could last for such a long time under the joint attack of 5 peak skysoars. They wouldn't even have the chance to retreat and recover, and would have been captured long ago. So Xiaoduo and Zhuxianyan were pushed back 7 times in a row, but they were still able to hold on. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that even skysoars of the same realm and cultivation could only be described as rare for them to be able to hold on until now. Based on this conclusion, even if Xiaoduo and Zhuxianyan hadn't reached the point of exhaustion, they were at least arrows at the end of their flight. This was the perfect time to attack. In an instant, the 5 of them soared into the sky like 5 goshawks. They were like the overlords of the sky, hunting rabbits. It was a piece of cake. At this moment, the 5 of them were moving at an extremely fast speed, displaying their full strength. The 5 of them had a plan in mind. At this critical moment, even if Zhuxianyan and Xiaoduo wanted to self-detonate, it was already too late. At this moment, Xiaoduo roared, "I'll fight it out with you." The 5 of them snorted. This brat wants to fight with his life? However, at this moment, they saw Xiaoduo suddenly flip over and stand up like a dragon. At the same time, the cultivation technique he displayed jumped from the first layer of the Flaming Sun Sutra, Flaming Sun, to the second layer, Flaming Sun Golden Sunday. Zhu Rong's primordial fire origin spirit converged and flowed out. Countless small gourds turned into fireflies that filled the sky, mixed with 15 cold stars. The galaxy collapsed. It was the starry sky indestructible stone, a hexagram, just like how the other party had waited patiently for an opportunity to make a move and end this battle after waiting patiently for so long. Similarly, after enduring for countless times, Xiaoduo finally got the opportunity to attack. The other party was greedy for victory and did not care about losing. They attacked with all their might. This was the best opportunity so far. Your time is ripe? Our time is ripe too. Both parties' concerns were the same from the start. If they fought head-on, it would only be a matter of life and death. They could not capture him alive. Both parties' goals were the same from the start. They had to capture him alive. At this moment, both parties' feelings were the same. They could capture him alive. The moment the countless hidden weapons were shot out, 2 huge hammers appeared in their hands. One was yin and one was yang. One was white and one was black. The mysterious energy converged into one and suddenly stirred up a storm. When the 2 hammers appeared, one above and one below suddenly pulled apart. At the same time, a gate to hell suddenly appeared. It was Xiaoduo's version of the 1,000 Souls Nightmare Hammer, descending into the world. At the same time, Zhuxianyan also let out a shrill cry. Her delicate body suddenly turned around and shot back. The clear blade of the sword suddenly became 10 times colder. The ice spirit, who had been hiding all this time, suddenly showed up. A surge of extreme coldness that was far more powerful than before swept out. Not only did it cover the 5 people, but it also covered the area with a radius of several thousand meters behind the 5 of them. Although it was not frozen for 1,000 miles, it was frozen for 3,000 feet. It only lasted for a moment. The moment Zhuxianyan attacked, Lei Changtian, who was watching the battle from the 9 heavens, immediately confirmed that the space below had turned into a huge ice block. Mysterious ice block. In this ice block, even time seemed to have stopped because of the extreme coldness. Even space seemed to have been separated from this part of the world. Only a ray of cold light and a ray of red light shot out from inside. Puff, puff, puff. Countless small gourds rained down on the bodies of the 5 Skysoar realm experts. However, they were still shattered, unable to break through the 5 people's protective true energy. Unfortunately, before the 5 people could heave a sigh of relief, they suddenly felt a slight pain in several parts of their bodies. Immediately, they felt as if their flesh was being squeezed and penetrated. Before they could even figure out what was going on, the 2 hammers and the sword had already arrived in front of them. The leader of the masked men in black exerted all his strength to dispel the extreme cold that covered his body with great difficulty. The moment he regained his mobility, the sudden attack came. He raised his sword to block, but his body inexplicably stiffened again. When he was horrified, the spirit-snatching sword had already rushed past his sword with a whistling sound. The treasured sword that had not suffered any damage after colliding with Zhuoxianyan's spirit snatcher sword thousands of times was now easily cut apart like a weed. Following that, he felt a chill on his shoulders and a pain in his dantian. His entire body gave birth to a strange feeling of floating. Then, he felt a chill from his knees that both his arms and legs had been separated from his body. Even his dantian had been frozen. Both his shoulders and his abdomen had been pierced by something unknown that the leader did not even have time to scream. He could only watch as Zhuoxianyan rushed past him with a cold face that on the other side. Zhuoxiaoduo brazenly sent the other party flying with a strike of his hammer. The landing point was very ingenious. It was precisely the dantian. A scorching hot flame flowed into his dantian. Zhu Rong's true fire directly ignited the other party's true origin. With a boom, that person's entire body was set ablaze. That person screamed miserably. However, with his true origin burning in his dantian, he could not even self-destruct. Yet, he still did not die. The pain at this moment was simply indescribable. Here, Zhuoxiaoduo's twin hammers intertwined with yin and yang, forming a strange spinning force. It collected the arms and legs of the Zhuoxianyan that had been cut off in midair. Then he smashed the nearest one with his hammer and turned it into a blazing torch in the mysterious ice aura. Chapter 1104. After successively succeeding, Zhuoxiaoduo placed Zhuoxianyan's severed arms and legs behind her buttocks as he muttered to himself. There's still spatial equipment on it. Nian Yin's personality isn't good. She's too prodigal. She only cares about fighting and collecting the opponent's heads. She didn't even remember to collect the rings. This isn't a good habit. I must severely criticize her in the future. She really doesn't know the value of money until she's in charge. How do you think your husband's net worth of trillions was accumulated? It's so hard to earn money. With another muffled boom, the profound ice force field was finally broken. The last person screamed and threw out all the weapons in his hands as hidden weapons. Flowers bloomed in all directions. Then, he turned around and ran as fast as lightning. However, as soon as he turned around, a tragic howl was heard. He didn't know what hidden weapon had hit him, but it couldn't heal. The wound continued to worsen, and the pain gradually intensified. Especially when he used all his strength to escape, he suddenly felt as if his internal organs were being torn apart. He endured the pain and ran 100 meters away. Suddenly, a fiery light came at him like a falling meteor, crashing into his crotch. Ouch! The last Skysoar expert hugged his crotch with both hands and howled miserably. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The one who had caused the meteor to fall was naturally Xiao. The demon clan's 7th prince, who was ambushed by Zhuoxiaoduo, had a small 3-legged golden crow. It was extremely accurate, or perhaps it was just a coincidence that it bumped into the other party's weakest spot. Suddenly, the smell of barbecue filled the air. Xiao directly passed through. This bird has never lost in a fight between rookies. I don't care if you're a meat bird or a chicken. I'll barbecue you. The opponent's that thing was burned by his high temperature. Not even a drop of blood flowed out as it dried up. It could be said to be a perfect operation. Zhuo Xiaoduo's figure flashed past like lightning and slapped the back of the person's head, who was still screaming miserably. He knocked the person out cleanly, and only then did he carry the body that was still twitching in pain and flew back in a carefree manner. He kicked the bodies of the two burning torches and withdrew the Zhu Rong real fire that had ignited the Dantian real fire. He then gathered the three charcoal-like fellows in the middle. On the other side, the Zhuo Xiaonian had already kicked the two men who had lost their arms and legs like two round tops. The five brothers were finally reunited, at the very least, compared to a few breaths ago, when he was in high spirits and full of confidence. Everything was within his grasp. It was poles apart. All five of them were still alive, not only because of their profound cultivation, but also because Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian had painstakingly planned for such a long time. This was the result that they had to achieve. All these things seem to take a long time to describe, but in fact it only took a few blinks of the eye. It was done in the blink of an eye, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. Out of the five, three were unconscious, and the other two were still conscious. At this moment, they were looking at Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian with anger and despair. It's over. These two little bastards actually hid their strength so well. But in the midst of despair, the five of them were also extremely confused and felt that it was inconceivable. They couldn't understand it at all. Just a moment ago, they had the upper hand. How did the situation suddenly take a turn for the worse? Of course, the other party had hidden their strength, and they had indeed caught them off guard. But how could the five of them not be able to withstand a single blow? How could he suddenly be disabled without any reaction at all? These two people's cultivation techniques were indeed powerful. But even if the strength that erupted at the end was stronger than theirs, and the situation was indeed unexpected, it didn't feel that they were absolutely undefeatable. What was going on? Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian looked at each other, and faintly felt that the current situation was a little too smooth. It was true that the two of them had planned this for a long time, and their calculations were meticulous and meticulous. However, in their original plan, they had never dared to think that they could capture all five of them alive in the face of these five experts, no matter how idealistic they were. They even thought about how to avoid a situation where both sides would suffer if the other party counterattacked. This was also the strategy that the two of them had decided from the beginning to show weakness. After fighting for a long time, they finally waited for the other party to attack with all their strength, and the opportunity to counterattack appeared. Even if they waited until now, even in the most ideal situation, they would only be able to capture 2 or 3 of the other party. It was inevitable that 2 or even 3 of the other party would escape. The other party was really a peak Skysoar realm expert, and each of them was a wily old fox. Even if they fell into a trap and fell into a passive position, their reaction speed wouldn't be too slow. They definitely wouldn't give the two of them a second chance to launch a surprise attack. If they could capture one of them alive, they would be able to break even. If they could capture 2 of them alive, it would already be an ideal goal. If they could capture 3 of them alive, they would really need to burn incense and walk on dogshit luck. As for capturing all 5 of them alive, although the 2 of them were conceited and didn't belittle themselves, they didn't even dare to think about it. But the reality was so bizarre and so thought-provoking. These 5 people seemed to have underestimated the 2 of them to the extreme and actually stepped into the trap so carelessly, allowing the 2 of them to turn the tables and capture them in one fell swoop. Zhuo Xiaoduo scratched his head, and Zhuo Xiaonian blinked. They both felt that this matter was a little inconceivable. The result was, more or less, a little dumbfounded. The 2 of them, although we already had a plan and were very sure that we had a chance to turn the tables, and even if we fought them head-on from the start, we still had a pretty good chance of winning. But, the 2 of us aren't that strong that although we won this battle, and that's what we should do, and it's reasonable to annihilate all of them like this. It really feels a little surreal. We really didn't have such extravagant hopes. It's more or less a little strange. No, it's just strange, Zhuo Xiaonian muttered softly. I think so too. It's really strange. Could it be the so-called heavenly luck? Heavenly luck? Luck is a part of strength, but it shouldn't be enough to tilt the battle to this extent. Zhuo raised his head and looked at the sky. There wasn't even a single cloud in the sky. He had been using his divine sense since the beginning of the battle, but there was also nothing. Maybe the other party was too careless? Zhuo scratched his head and simply stopped thinking about this problem. He turned around and cleaned up the battlefield abnormally quickly. Zhuo rubbed each person's body, and the abundant vitality from the heaven-mending stone rushed into them. This way, he could ensure that these 5 people wouldn't die. Then, he took the opportunity to withdraw Zhu Rong's real fire. Then, he sealed the dantian of these half-dead people and broke their limbs. He took back the starry sky indestructible stone, and Zhuo did the same. She took back the extremely cold spiritual energy and sealed it. Then, he began to clean up the battlefield. He kept the 5 half-dead people into the spatial extermination pagoda. Zhuo turned the scattered arms and legs up and down. He very carefully took off the rings, bracelets, and the bits and pieces that were tied to these body parts. As a peak Skysoar realm cultivator, the bits and pieces that he carried with him wouldn't be ordinary. This was for sure. Zhuo, who had always thought that the sky was 9 feet higher and had recently lost a lot of money, naturally wouldn't let go of a single bit. After confirming that there were no more omissions, Zhuo casually kicked the arms and legs down the cliff. Their masters were still useful for the time being. Let them have a taste of the extremely poisonous taste of Death Valley first. Zhuo frowned and squinted at Zhuo disdainfully. As a clean and fragrant little fairy, these things are too disgusting. I won't touch them. Zhuo looked at Zhuo very arrogantly. Zhuo was still working tirelessly. He casually took out a space ring. Zhu Rong's real fire surrounded it and immediately broke the soul binding. He looked into it with his divine sense and couldn't help but laugh. There are really a lot of good things in here. I wonder if the fragrant and clean little fairy wants them. Zhuo immediately stretched out her white and tender little hand. Hurry up and give them to me. These were taken from the hands of those disgusting things. Are you sure you want them? Good things aren't disgusting. Zhuo stretched out her little hand and said proudly, "Give them to me. I'll keep them for you." Okay. Zhuo obediently handed them over and said with a smile, "In a traditional family, the husband's good things are kept by the wife. Men don't care about money." Well, that's the reason. Zhuo's pretty face blushed. She took all the space equipment with a clear conscience and put them away as if they were natural. She said, "What husband and wife? Your things should be kept by me, shouldn't they?" She wrinkled her nose and asked fiercely, "Isn't that right?" Yes. Zhuo nodded and bowed. "You're right. You're absolutely right." "Oof. Master, are we going back now?" "Wait a moment. I'll clean this place again." Zhuo rolled her eyes and waved her hand. Then a cold wind suddenly blew the whole mountain clean. All the traces of the battle were gone. Wherever the cold wind passed, even the bloodstains and all kinds of patterns on the mountain were cleaned up. Zhuo was still worried and checked again. Finally, he released a gust of cold wind, freezing the entire mountain peak into a huge ice block. Then, she left with Zhuo. Are the little kids nowadays so powerful? Lei Zhangtian turned into the void, watching from the air with a face full of appreciation. He had been watching the whole battle just now. At the last moment, he couldn't help but intervene a little. He thought it was flawless, but he didn't expect the 2 little guys to be so sensitive. He was almost discovered. At this moment, seeing Zhuo's action, he was even more confused. He didn't understand why Zhuo did that. The battle took place here. The other party can be sure that the battle took place here. Why did she have to go through so much trouble to clean up the traces? What's the point? But he tried to adjust the time back to 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. There was still an hour left. Chapter 1105. And they cleaned it again and again. There must be a reason behind it. But what exactly is the reason? Why can't I understand it? If none of the 5 of them go back, they will definitely be suspicious. But this little girl seems to be very smart. There must be a reason for her to do this. Let me use the thinking of the #1 detective in the past to make a good deduction. After a long time, Lei Chantian, who is still confused, sighed. I can't figure it out. There is only one truth. But where is it? Then he frowned and pondered while flying toward the city. But after flying for a long time, he didn't find any trace of his grandson and granddaughter. He was a little confused. Where did they go? Where are they? Then he flew to Zhuo Xiaoyan's place anxiously. But there was no one there. Fuck. Lei Chantian was anxious. How? How did we lose them again? I drove by Yinduo away, but I lost them again? And this time we lost them both at once? Fuck. Old Devil Lei was completely bewildered. After Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan flew down the mountain, they immediately found a hidden place to hide. Then they entered the space-destroying tower. Why did you clean up the mountain? Is it necessary? Or do you have a backup plan? It's not necessary. What backup can I have? I just cleaned it up so that we don't have to look at it anymore. Out of sight, out of mind, isn't it? Out of sight, out of mind, is that what you mean? Deceiving others. Humph. You obviously suspect that there is someone above us. So, you purposely created a useless mountain for them to figure out. And then we can take the opportunity to slip away, right? You must have planned it this way, right? Of course. Zhuo Xiaoyan was very proud. Although the person who helped us probably didn't mean us any harm, it's not impossible that the enemy did it on purpose. At this time, life and death are at stake. It's better to be cautious. That's amazing. My Yin Yin cat is so smart. She's beautiful and intelligent. She's really my good wife. Oomph. Now you know how powerful I am. Amazing, really amazing. No matter who it is, let him think about my intentions in front of a frozen mountain. Let's get down to business first. Serious business? Zhuo Xiaoduo's interest was piqued. Bridal chamber? Get lost. Zhuo Xiaoyan blushed and kicked the puppy to the ground. Interrogation. What dirty things are you thinking about? Dogs can't change their habit of eating. Eating? You. Zhuo Xiaoduo arranged the 5 people in a row. 3 of them looked better than charcoal. Their faces and bodies were covered in burns. That was the result of being turned into charcoal. The 2 who didn't turn into charcoal looked like human limbs. In any case, the 5 of them didn't look human at all. However, the 5 of them were dejected and had a look of despair on their faces. Nevertheless, it was undeniable that each of them was breathing well. They could be considered healthy. Except for the fact that they couldn't move, their bodies were damaged, and their dantians were destroyed, they could be considered healthy. Even their spirits were not bad. So Xiaoduo stood in front of the 5 and sneered. The 5 of you, we meet again in the mountains and rivers. And this time we can sit down and have a good chat. It's not easy to be so calm and peaceful. The 5 of them didn't say a word. Their faces were ashen as if they were dead. To put it bluntly, after cultivating to the sky realm, they had already left the realm of mortals. After so many years of life and death battles, which one of them couldn't see through life and death? Everyone felt that they had already seen through everything. What was the point of extorting a confession through torture? It was nothing more than some physical pain. After enduring it, they would just die. They still had this bit of confidence. After all, their dantians were destroyed, and their cultivation path was completely cut off. Furthermore, they had fallen to their current state. It would be more accurate to say that they had nothing left to live for. Therefore, no matter how this grandson in front of them spouted nonsense, the 5 of them remained indifferent and ignored him. Don't even think about getting any information from us. The 5 of you, today's environment, and your positions really make me sigh. I didn't expect the 5 of you to be so high and mighty just a moment ago, thinking that everything was under your control. But now, all of you are kneeling in front of me. This really makes me sigh. Every dog has its day. I really feel that this sentence makes a lot of sense. They still didn't say a word. I know that each of you is a tough nut to crack. But you should also know that after falling into my hands, the possibility of you continuing to live is not 0. Instead, it's 0. There's no more luck. Zwa Xiaoduo said with a smile, but I still want to know some things from your mouths. So, it's a little difficult for old and tough nuts like you, right? The five of them raised their heads and glanced at Zwa Xiaoduo with contempt. They still didn't say a word. However, if you want to die a quick death in my hands, it won't be that easy. Don't tell me you don't want to die a quick death? Zwa Xiaoduo asked. The contempt was still there. Are you really that unafraid of death? Aren't you afraid of torture? The contempt was still there. Good men. I like good men the most. So Xiaoduo laughed loudly. Don't worry. What we have the most right now is time. A contemptuous look. It was still a contemptuous look. Watch carefully. Don't be afraid, and don't be surprised. Suddenly, he pulled out one of the bodies that was relatively intact. Without saying a word, he swung the sword in his hand and slashed it 400 to 500 times in a row. That guy's body was densely covered in cuts and bruises. His body was riddled with wounds, and blood immediately gushed out like a fountain. However, the five of them still didn't show any fear. They even looked at him with contempt. That's it. The person who was being tortured gritted his teeth. He didn't say a word throughout the whole process. His expression didn't change. After all, this scene had long been within their expectations. It wasn't surprising at all. What was there to be afraid of? What a tough nut to crack. The surprises keep coming. Take your time to savor them. After saying that, Zwa Xiaoduo took out a jar of fine sand salt and slowly sprinkled it on the man. The man trembled all over and broke out in a cold sweat. However, he still didn't say a word, and his expression didn't change. He took out another jar of honey and smeared some on the wounds all over his body. Then he waved his hand. This time, along with the wave of his hand, countless bees, ants, scorpions, flies, all kinds of poisonous insects, and a few snakes that a sweet fragrance filled the air. These things crawled over one after another in search of the fragrance. In just a short while, they had already crawled all over the man's body. This time, the five people's expressions finally changed, especially the man who was covered in strange things. He finally couldn't help but howl, "Kill me. This is nothing. Didn't I say that the surprises keep coming? We just have to savor them." The four people couldn't bear to watch anymore. The man continued to struggle in pain and howl. A full 3 hours later, finally, he didn't even have the strength to moan anymore, causing the extreme scene to stagnate. This man was tough and determined. He still didn't say a word in such a situation. It looked like he was about to die. He was on his last breath. The muscles on the other four people's faces twitched. Their eyes were full of hatred, but there was also a little envy. They seemed to be envious that their companion had died, just like that. He was finally free and didn't have to be tortured anymore. The four people were very clear that with the injuries they had suffered, even if they had miraculous pills and miraculous doctors, they wouldn't be able to save them. How could they live when their blood had dried up? How could they live when their source of origin was exhausted? How is it? Zwa Xiaoduo asked with a smile. Naive. The leader of the masked men in black sneered. If this is all you can do, I advise you to kill us quickly. Don't be wishful thinking and waste a good time. This is all you can do to scare ordinary people, but for us, So Xiaoduo said with a smile, alas, this is what I'm relying on, but there's a follow-up to this. There's no need to rush. This is just the beginning. Didn't I say it several times? The surprises keep coming. We have plenty of time, so please continue to savor them. After saying that, he waved his hand again. The torrent fell from the sky and washed away the dying man in an instant. The man had stopped breathing, but his body was still warm. But he was already dead. But the next moment, a stone suddenly appeared in Zwa Xiaoduo's hand. He said with a smile, let's continue with the surprises. Let me show you a magic trick. I guarantee that you will be very surprised, and very suspicious. As he said that, he threw the small stone on the dead man. Then the other four people didn't know what was going on. They were gradually trembling, and their eyes were gradually filled with shock and horror. The man who had just died was breathing again. Starting from his chest, his breathing gradually became more and more powerful. Then, the countless wounds on his body, which had turned white after being washed by the water, healed at a rate visible to the naked, but it only took a few breaths. When Xiaoduo put away the small stone, the man had completely recovered. His torso was even healthier than before he was tortured. There was not a single scar on his body. Even some old scars had disappeared. The four people's bodies trembled uncontrollably. Their eyes were gradually filled with fear. Where? Where am I? The man on the ground opened his eyes and sighed. I'm finally free. It's so comfortable. It turns out that it's so comfortable to die. Suddenly, he saw the four people in front of him who looked as if they had seen ghosts. He was stunned. This. The four people's eyes were full of sorrow and horror. The moment they turned their heads, they saw Xiaoduo's devilish smile. They couldn't help but be stunned. Then they screamed, What? What's going on? Chapter 1106. It's very simple. You're not dead yet. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? It's what Xiaoduo said with a smile. If I don't let you die, can you die? Is this game fun? Do you want to play for a long time? The breathing of the five people became heavy at the same time, and they stared at Xiaoduo. If looks could kill, Xiaoduo's body would have been full of holes and fragmented. Do you know what this is? Xiaoduo held the sky-mending stone in his hand and began to explain. It looks like a very ordinary small stone, right? But what I want to tell you is that this stone is the legendary sky-mending stone of Her Majesty Emperor Enrich. He pointed to the top of his head. I believe you should have heard that when the sky collapsed, it was Her Majesty Emperor Enrich who mended the sky and made it flawless. Because of this, Her Majesty Emperor Enrich became a saint. And this stone was left behind by Her Majesty Emperor Enrich. Even the sky can be mended, let alone the body. So Xiaoduo said with a smile, I know you don't believe it and have doubts. But it doesn't matter. Facts speak louder than words. We have plenty of time. I will make you believe in the efficacy of this stone without any doubt. Next, it's time for the others to perform. Next, the nightmare of these five people really showed itself. Everyone ensured that their minds were absolutely clear and their nerves were very tenacious. They endured the process of being tortured from life to death and then coming back from the dead. Every time, for people watched one person being tortured, each punishment was more or less the same. It was even very ordinary. It was nothing more than the same thing. After one round, so Xiaoduo continued to calmly start the second round, the second round, the second round, and the second round, the true cruelty of the competition began. Because in the first round, their bodies were all riddled with holes and seriously injured. Although they had been treated, their spirits were slightly better. There was always a limit to the pain in their bodies. However, at the end of the first round, everyone's bodies had been completely restored, and the second round of punishment was a completely new and extreme process. It was like a person who had just experienced half death and was disheartened. He would not be afraid of death and would even yearn for death. He would be able to end everything and be completely free. At this time, it did not matter how you tortured him because he knew that he might lose consciousness in the next moment. As long as he held on for a while longer, he would be free. However, if a person who had just experienced perfect health was then tortured to death, that was completely different. It was completely different. It was completely different from before. It would be a qualitative change that would lead to a qualitative change. As expected, the second time, the screams were much louder and more intense than the first time. The five of them gritted their teeth and stared at the small stone in Xiaoduo's hand. Everyone was praying or hoping that the little rock would quickly exhaust its energy so that they could be freed, even if it was the heaven-mending stone. It was only such a small piece. With the consumption of the flesh and bones resurrection, its energy should be exhausted very soon, right? However, the five of them were disappointed to find that there was almost no change in the little rock. There was really almost no change. After 10 consecutive resurrections, there was almost no sign of it fading. However, the five of them were very experienced, and their eyes were sharp. They were able to see the slight difference between the two. However, The result of their calculation was that when the little rock completely exhausted its energy, the 5 of them would have to go through at least a few hundred times. After coming to this conclusion, their hearts trembled and they shuddered. Although they did not know exactly how many times, one thing was certain. They estimated that they would not be able to hold on until the little rock exhausted its energy. However, the 5 of them still had a little bit of wishful thinking in their hearts. You're willing to waste such a precious thing on us like this? So, if we grit our teeth, maybe we can get through it? However, in the next moment, when they saw another larger piece of 5-colored stone, which was more than 10 times bigger than the previous little rock, appear, they all collapsed at the same time. The little rock just now looked colorless, but it could still bring the 5 of them back to life a few hundred times. Then, what kind of power would this bigger one, which even showed a colorful luster, have? What's more, when someone was tortured again, Zwishaoduo threw the big 5-colored stone over from a few meters away. The 5 of them completely collapsed, because this time it was even faster. The recovery was even faster. In the blink of an eye, all the injured people had recovered. How is it? I told you that there would be surprises coming one after another, right? Let's play slowly, we have a lot of time. Zwishaoduo walked over leisurely and put away the 5-colored sky-mending stone. My teacher was killed by you. How can I let you go so easily? I will kill everyone on your side 100 times, 1,000 times. Remember, it's each and every one of you. I will torture you slowly. 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. As long as I don't want you to die, you won't die. I know that you are stubborn. I also know that you can resist. But I'm really not in a hurry. I want to see how long you can hold on. It doesn't matter if you don't tell me anything, because I will know sooner or later. I also know that the dragons fighting for the heritage are right in front of me. Your plan will eventually appear in front of me. As long as I act like I am going to escape from the city, you will be nervous and will act rashly. Once you're nervous and act rashly, you will come and catch me. So, it doesn't matter if you don't tell me. I will wait. I will run once today and again tomorrow. I believe that I will catch new people very soon. I believe that you already know the level of our strength. After today's battle, you should know very well that even if a Dao integration stage expert comes, it will be impossible for him to catch us. Even if we can't beat him, we can at least run away, right? So, let's play slowly, continue to play, and play for a long time. Zwishaoduo spoke slowly from the beginning to the end, with a calm smile on his face. However, the 5 people opposite him were trembling all over. They knew that Zwishaoduo was not bragging. Everything he said was the truth. It was the reality. He did have the opportunity and the ability. Moreover, everything he said could be put into action and become a reality. Are you going to say it or not? The 5 of them were silent. It's okay, we have plenty of time. Let's go through another round of reincarnation. Who wants to go first? Zwishaoduo laughed heartily and flashed his long sword again. This round, when he tortured the 4th person, someone finally could not take it anymore. Give him a quick death, I will speak. No, Zwishaoduo shook his head. I said that 1 round of reincarnation means 1 round of reincarnation. 1 round of reincarnation means that all 5 of us have to go through 1 round of reincarnation. If you tell the truth now, won't you make me go back on my word? A man's word is a man of his word. He actually did the same to the 5th person while the 5 people were cursing him. Then he asked, who wanted to speak just now? A man's word is a man of his word. But where is the credibility of a man? The 5 people gritted their teeth and looked at him as if they wanted to eat him alive. The person who said that he wanted to speak earlier said, I will speak. What about the 4 of you? Are you still not going to speak? The 4 of them were still silent. Well, there is only one thing that I can't say. Firstly, I don't like this. Secondly, without a reference, who knows if you are telling the truth? Thirdly, you are not of one mind. Come, let's go through another round of reincarnation. Without giving the other party any room to speak, Zwishaoduo started to torture him again without saying a word. I already said that I will tell you. I can tell you whatever you want to know. Why are you still doing it? The 5th person roared. So you still don't understand the situation? Zwishaoduo smiled. I just want to torture you a few more times to avenge my master." In the midst of the 5 people's angry curses, he went through another round of reincarnation. Then he asked again, "How many of you are willing to speak now? Is there anyone who still doesn't want to speak?" "I will speak. I will speak. I will speak. I will speak." Only the leader, the masked man in black, kept his mouth tightly shut and looked desolate. "For against one? Then if there is anyone who is unwilling to speak, let's go through another round of reincarnation." Zhuo said coldly, "I will speak." The leader of the men in black looked up and stared at Zhuo. "Give us a quick death. It's too late. Wait for the next round." Zhuo started a new round of reincarnation again. After being tortured this time, the 5 people whose minds were completely shattered did not even have the urge to curse. They only screamed and begged for mercy. All of them screamed, "Please kill me. I will speak. I will tell you everything." Zhuo finally started the interrogation. Or rather, he allowed these 5 people to be interrogated. His method was simple and crude. He did not interrogate them separately. Instead, he slapped 4 of them until they fainted, leaving only one alive. "Speak." After the first one finished speaking, he woke the second one up and slapped the first one unconscious again. "Speak." Then, he did the same to the third one. The statements of the 5 people were basically the same, with only a few minor differences. Obviously, the 4 of them had already accepted their fate and did not dare to have any other thoughts. They only wanted to get rid of the nightmare as soon as possible and get away from Zhuo, the creator of nightmares. "Where are you from?" "Astral Soul's continent." "What is your current position?" "No position. I used to follow the clan's battle team and fought at the Sun Moon Pass." "Why did you retire?" "Not retired. You are a member of the clan. Every 10 years, you will be rotated. Under special circumstances, you can apply." "Did you advance to the Sky Realm while you were in the army at the Sun Moon Pass?" "No. After experiencing life and death in the Sun Moon Pass, I relied on the accumulated resources to advance to the Sky Realm after returning to the clan." Zhuo nodded. This could be considered as solving one of his previous doubts, as he discovered that these 5 peak Skysoar Realm experts only had experience. In terms of actual combat prowess, they were much weaker than the peak Skysoar Realm experts that he had fought against in the Demon Spirit Forest. "How many times did you suppress a peak profound returning realm expert?" 5 times. 5 times? They could be considered as geniuses of the Astral Soul's continent. They're the best of the best. Zhuo sighed. These questions seemed to be useless, but it was enough for Zhuo to remove himself from the military subservience. If it was the disciples of the family who took turns to train, just like some of the smaller families in Fenghai, the disciples of the family were forced to recruit soldiers. A family, however many men and how many warriors, would serve in the Sun Moon Pass, according to the ratio. Once the minimum number of years of service was reached, the clan would be allowed to replace them with other people. As long as the number of people serving in the military was not lower than this number, it was within the scope of the regulations. This was also the price the great clans had to pay to enjoy the glory of their ancestors. Regardless of whether these people were willing or not, they had to set foot on the battlefield for a period of time. This practice was fundamentally different from the soldiers of the 4 armies who had been stationed at the border for a long time. Although during wartime, they were also enlisted soldiers and had to fight bloody battles to protect the country, the original intention in their bones was completely different. Most of the members of these clans who serve in the military would not choose to break through in the Sun Moon Pass. 99% of them would return to their clans after gaining experience in the Sun Moon Pass and rely on piling up resources to finally break through. This made Zhuo look down on this group of people even more. "Which clan are you from?" Here came the main event. When Zhuo asked this question, he could clearly sense the hesitation of the people in front of him. "Wang clan." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I advise you to think carefully before answering. I hope to get the same answer. If the 5 of you don't agree, it means that one of you is lying. You should know the consequences very well." "I'm sure." "Well, Wang clan, Are you direct descendants or adopted? Or was it his family? Collateral relatives? Adopted. Oh, adopted. The so-called adopted children were orphans and infants with martial arts aptitudes, collected by the major clans with large amounts of resources. They were raised from a young age, and the men of sacrifice trained by these clans were mostly selected from these people. Usually, these people were loyal and devoted. After all, they were not related by blood, but they raised them up and gave them a lifetime of prospects and skills. How could they not be grateful? This clan used this kind of gratitude and mentality to completely brainwash these people into becoming loyal to the clan. As for adopted children, they were one level lower. Adopted children referred to the children of these men of sacrifice who were married and had children. They were born in this clan from a young age. Housekeepers, stewards, external affairs, deacons, accountants, shopkeepers, guards, and so on were generally selected from these people. After that, they were blood relatives in a literal sense. There is no need to go into detail here. In the astral souls continent, there was a strange phenomenon. Even before the destruction of the world, the continent had abolished slavery and feudalism. However, these clans cleverly took advantage of this and created such loyal men. Moreover, as time passed, more and more clans realized that in a person's life, from a certain perspective, they needed to have faith and a goal to be loyal to. From a certain perspective, if a person did not have a target to be loyal to and did not have a life goal that he firmly believed in, such a person would not achieve much. Once a person lacked passion, fanaticism, and concentration, it was inevitable that he would change his mind. There would be no concept of loyalty in his heart. Naturally, there would be no passion for the person he was loyal to, and his life would pass by in a muddle-headed manner. Therefore, these clans did the opposite. From a young age, they were instilled with the idea that in a person's life, there must be a goal to strive for, and the person who strives for it is the Lord, who is the backbone of the clan. In ancient times, it was said that if one learned martial arts, they would be sold to the royal family. And before they were sold to the royal family, there was another way, and that was to become the disciple of the person who taught them that, and this kind of relationship was usually more serious and stable than that of a loyal ruler. Most people would never betray or have a rebellious heart in their life. Why did a general have to have a personal guard when he went to war? What was a personal guard? It was a person who would use his or her life in exchange for the general's survival. That was a personal guard. They did not have a life of their own, and they lived for this person their whole life. The topic had been diverted. To put it simply, these clans had recreated the embryonic form of a feudal society within their own clans. And this kind of effect was surprisingly good, unexpectedly good. In a person's life, there were a lot of components in their genes. It was pride and ambition, but there was also a certain part of it that was servility. The difference was just that it depended on how the person dug it out, used it, and controlled it. That was all. In fact, the fact that Zhuo was able to pry open the mouths of these people was just another manifestation of his servility. After answering the first key question, the so-called loyalty and sense of honor would all go down the drain, and there would be no more reservations. Wang clan, why is this the cause of this matter? Why do you want to deal with me? Well, we really don't know the specific reason. We are far from being involved in the decision-making. We just received orders from our master and carried them out. What is the specific content of the order? We must lure Zhuo to Shangjing before the dragons scramble for the heritage. We must also ensure that Zhuo will not leave Shangjing during the dragon scramble for the heritage. At the same time, he cannot participate in the dragon scramble for the heritage. This order is very thought-provoking. Zhuo touched his chin and pondered. This order made him feel confused. What else? For this goal, we can act at our discretion. Act at our discretion. Qin Fangyang is just a bait. Ever since he entered Ancestral Dragon of Shangjing, he has been under our family surveillance. He is the best tool we can use. As long as we kill him, we can lure you to Shangjing. As long as we keep an eye on you, we can make a move at any time. Taking you down and controlling you will ensure that the mission is foolproof. This is the first reason. What's the second reason? He UN as grave in Phoenix City is also one of the targets of our plan. If Qin Fangyang fails, we will take action to destroy He Yunu's grave and expose her bones in the wilderness. The living may be able to escape, but the dead will not move by themselves. As long as we leave clues, you will naturally come to Shangjing and walk into the trap. We just need to wait for the right time. Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly felt that his breath was stuck in his chest. In an instant, he felt that he was so angry that he wanted to destroy the world. Huff, huff. So Xiaoduo gasped for breath, enduring the pain and anger in his heart. Is there a third plan, another backup plan? Yes. The third plan is to kill Li Changjiang and Hu Riyun in Phoenix City and leave clues in Shangjing. As for the rest, we will deal with them as usual. The fourth plan is to destroy the second high school in Phoenix City. The fifth plan is to rape and kill Zhou Xiaoyan. Originally, your parents, Changlu and Wu Yuding, were also on our list of targets to kill. They were also the first choice in our plan. But your parents suddenly disappeared, and we can't find their whereabouts, so the masked man in black was particularly straightforward this time. He explained all the plans one by one. So Xiaoduo felt a chill down his spine as he listened. He had to admit that the masked man's understanding of him was extremely thorough. As long as any one of these things happened, he would definitely come to Shangjing on his own accord. Moreover, he would spare no effort to pursue them to Shangjing as soon as possible. If he could not figure out the whole story, take revenge, and destroy all his enemies, he would definitely not leave. If that was the case, wouldn't he be stepping into the trap that the other party had set in advance? How many of these plans have you carried out? Zhou Xiaoduo's heart skipped a beat. His voice turned impatient. The first and second. The masked man in black said, after Qin Fangyang was killed, there was no news about you for a short period of time. Because they weren't sure of your whereabouts, there was already a second group of people who went to Phoenix City. They planned to destroy He Yunu's grave first, and then stay in Phoenix City to wait for further news. However, the progress of the matter over there is temporarily unknown. They only left for a day, and there was news about you. Bastard. Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly flew into a rage. His fists and feet flew everywhere. After a series of wild punches, the masked man in black in front of him was smashed into pieces. Finally, he still had a bit of clarity. He used the heaven-mending stone to wake him up again. Then, he repeatedly tormented him. His punches were deeply carved into his flesh and bones. So Xiaoduo was really mad. According to the time, the other side's plan to destroy He Yunu's grave was most likely already in action. He was in Shangjing and was too far away to stop it no matter what. So Xiaoduo only felt that his internal organs were about to explode at this moment. Qin Fangyang was killed in Shangjing, and He Yunu's grave was destroyed in Phoenix City. This kind of heart-wrenching pain made Zhou Xiaoduo unable to breathe. How could you? How dare you? How could you? How dare you? How dare you? Do you still have the slightest bit of conscience? Two respectable teachers who have dedicated their lives to the astral soul's mainland. How could you? Chapter 1107. Zhou Xiaoduo was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was so angry that he saw stars. If you still have a little bit of humanity left in you, I don't want you to have a conscience, but have you lost even a little bit of humanity? The Wang family. The Wang family. Zhou Xiaoduo made a heartfelt vow. This time, even if I have to bear the world's infamy, I will wipe out your entire family. Men, women, old and young, not a single one of you will be spared. Even if you're just a baby, I, Zhou Xiaoduo, will kill you with my own hands. Zhou Xiaoduo was so angry that his hair stood on end. Zhou Xiaoyan, who was beside him, was also furious. She held the hilt of her sword tightly. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to get all the information, Zhou Xiaoyan would have rushed forward and slashed the masked man in front of him into pieces. When Zhou Xiaoduo started the interrogation, his methods were cruel. Zhou Xiaoyan didn't mind, but she didn't want to see Zhou Xiaoduo like this. Therefore, she didn't participate in the interrogation. Instead, she practiced and waited from afar. However, after hearing about the targets, Zhou Xiaoyan even wanted to carry out the punishment herself. The word scum wasn't enough to describe what these people had done. The masked man in black was tortured several times. He didn't have the slightest bit of anger anymore. There was no hope in his eyes. He just told them what they wanted to know mechanically. He only hoped that after he finished, the 5 of them would say the same thing and die quickly. That would be the greatest relief for him. You don't know the real target and purpose. Then, which other families are involved? You should know, right? 4 of the clans have already been eliminated. The Fan family? The Lu family? The Bai family? The Yin family? Yes. Which other families? The head steward of the Huangfu family contacted us. The second prince and the third prince also contacted us. However, during this time, the third prince's people were being monitored. We cut off contact with them. And there's also a group of mysterious people, but we don't know their origins. I only know that there was a woman among them, a very young woman. How did you know? There was one time when they met in secret. We were guarding outside, and those people came and went without a trace. But one thing was for sure. When we went to clean up, there was still the scent of a woman. Then how do you know he's young? All these years, we played with quite a lot of women. Everyone has some ability to distinguish a woman's aura. Just from the aura left behind, we can tell that the other party is a young beauty, and most likely a virgin. Oh, you can actually smell it? So Xiao Duo scratched his head, feeling that it was very profound, but now was not the time to think about this. The Huangfu family, the second prince, the third prince, and the mysterious person. The Wang family. So Xiao Duo murmured. The murderous intent in his eyes had solidified. As for the slight differences, it was limited to the details of their work. It didn't affect the big picture. Zhou Xiaoduo could more or less determine the functions of these 5 people. They were the high-level fighters who listened to the orders of the master. They weren't considered high-level fighters, but they weren't considered low-level fighters either. It was probably a gold medal team that only the absolute upper echelons could order around. It was a high-end combat power, and these people were called the action team in the Wang family. This name was really fucking high and mighty. As the name implied, they were only responsible for operations, only responsible for fighting and killing. But when it came to decision-making, management, and handling, they didn't participate in any of it. To put it more simply, the master spoke and the rough men acted. The latter listened to orders and didn't leave anything else. And there was more than one such action team in the Wang family. It was just that they didn't belong to each other, and they weren't familiar with each other. They were limited to knowing each other's existence. And after determining their respective functions, they immediately belonged to each other. From then on, other than their own work, they didn't need to care about anything else, let alone inquire about it. The clear division of labor and strict discipline made Zhou Xiaoduo's scalp tingle and shudder. In addition to the action team, there was also the assassination team, the pusher team, and so on. The moment he heard the name of the pusher team, Zhou Xiaoduo unexpectedly remembered something from the past. It was the past of Vice Principal Shi Yunfeng of Hidden Dragon High School. Although Vice Principal Shi was now rehabilitated and his reputation was cleared, the mastermind behind the waves on the internet back then hadn't really been caught. Now, the so-called pusher team of the Wang family touched Zhou Xiaoduo's sensitive nerves at this sensitive time. Zhou Xiaoduo's eyes flashed with a bloody light. He faintly felt that. He might have found the source of the matter this time. And this source was actually a colossus that had stood tall for thousands or even tens of thousands of years, deeply rooted in the astral souls of the human race's upper echelons. Even Sky Soar realm experts, these top-notch experts of the human race, actually had so many teams in the Wang family, divided into different categories. What kind of concept was this? Although it wasn't the kind of peak Sky Soar realm experts that had been tempered through bloody battles, this kind of accumulation of Sky Soar realm experts was still enough to make people flabbergasted. Let's not talk about anything else, just take the 5 people in front of them as an example. If there were more than 5 people, as long as there were more than 10 people, and the other party didn't underestimate them, and Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaoyan didn't escape, So the Xiao duo and Zhou Xiaoyan might not dare say that they would win. Even if they won, they would have to pay a considerable price. Don't forget, the Wang family didn't only have the action team, they also had the assassination team. Their combat strength couldn't be underestimated, and their lethality was even greater. While the whole continent was engaged in bloody battles at the Sun Moon Pass, and millions of hot-blooded men were spilling their blood, a single family actually hid such a powerful force. The Wang family. So a Xiao duo roared at the sky. How can such a malignant tumor family survive until now? Malignant tumor family? Even the person being interrogated had a mocking look in his eyes. Zhou Xiaoyan sighed. The Wang family? The Wang family is not ordinary. So Xiao duo frowned. This Wang family, what kind of background does it have? Zhou Xiaoyan sighed and recalled the information about the Wang family that she had obtained from the Nine Heavens Pavilion's database. The more she thought about it, the more she sighed. Gradually, her heart was filled with melancholy and frustration. Duo, the Wang family is not so easy to deal with. How is it not easy? The Wang family is not an ordinary family. If our enemy this time is destined to be the Wang family, then we have to plan for the long term. Zhou Xiaoyan suppressed her hatred and said, I also want to uproot the Wang family now, but we can't act rashly. We have to plan carefully before we act, and we can't afford to be careless. Zhou Xiao duo refused to accept this and asked, why? Do we have to keep such a family alive? Of course not. Zhou Xiaoyan sighed. Let's put it this way. Even if something happened to the Yu family, which is ranked first among the aristocratic families, with the celestial emperor Zhai Xing and the heavenly king of the right, they might be able to deal with it as they should. However, the Wang family has a special characteristic that even the Yu family doesn't have. What special characteristic is that? Because the elders of the Wang family sacrificed themselves heroically for the future of the continent. So Xiaoyan let out a long sigh. It's this achievement that made the future generations unable to ignore it. With this achievement in front of us, it's easier said than done to touch the Wang family. So Xiaoduo's expression turned serious. You mean, Heavenly King Wang? Yes, Zhou Xiaoyan said slowly. The Wang family is a special aristocratic family that once had a heavenly king among their ancestors. Originally, the Wang family was just an unknown third-rate family. However, with the rise of heavenly king Gu Hong, Wang Fei Hong, the Wang family's status rose along with it. Heavenly king Gu Hong, Wang Fei Hong, was at the same time as the celestial emperor Zhai Xing and the heaven inspecting minister. The celestial emperor Zhai Xing's achievements were comparable to the Flood Witch and the Tao League's Taoist Lei. Wang Fei Hong was the first heavenly king of the Astral Souls continent, and also the first heavenly king of the Astral Souls continent. His position was only below the minister and the celestial emperor. Back then, the minister and the Alliance of the Tao League confronted each other in order to obtain a share of the token of gratitude for the Astral Souls continent. The Flood Witch said, even if the token of gratitude was given to the Astral Souls continent, does the Astral Souls continent have enough power to guarantee the authority of the token of gratitude? If they don't, even with the token of gratitude, it's just a piece of paper. What she meant was that the humans of the Astral Souls continent had to show their strength and prove their worth with their strength to intimidate the two continents. If you dare to touch my prodigy, we will retaliate with absolute power. Even someone as strong as the Flood Witch and the Tao League #1, Taoist Lei, won't be able to stop us. After all, the Flood Witch is only an arbitrator. However, arbitration can only be done when both sides have the strength. If a giant dragon and an ant have a conflict, what's the need for arbitration? The Tao League and the Alliance of many heavenly kings didn't agree to the Astral Souls continent being covered by the token of gratitude. Therefore, the three sides fought. The minister challenged the Flood Witch, and the Celestial Emperor challenged the Tao League's Taoist Lei. However, the others didn't have the strength to challenge the Great Shaman and the other swords. Therefore, after the minister argued for it, it was decided that the heavenly kings would fight. The 9 battles decided the future of the Astral Souls continent. However, the Astral Souls continent only sent 3 people to fight. The minister couldn't spare any attention to deal with the Flood Witch. The Celestial Emperor also couldn't spare any attention to deal with Taoist Lei. The remaining 7 battles could only be fought by Heavenly King Wang alone. In this battle, as the number 1 Heavenly King of the Astral Souls continent, Wang Feihong fought with the determination to die. Before the battle, he said to the minister and the Celestial Emperor, "There must be sacrifices in this battle. If we don't sacrifice blood to the heavens, how can there be peace? The 2 of you are the pillars of the heavens. You can't lose. If this battle requires someone with enough weight to die, then I, the first in line, will be the one to do it. If anything happens to me in this battle, the Wang family behind me will have to rely on my brothers to take care of it." Chapter 1108. Zhou Xiaoyan's expression was solemn. She couldn't help but respect the battle back then. In that battle, Wang Feihong challenged the Tao League and the Umno Alliance, who clearly expressed their opposition to the 7 heavenly kings of the Astral Souls. In that battle, Wang Feihong defeated the Umno Alliance's Heavenly King Ironbone, the Umno Alliance's Heavenly King Jinhua, and the Tao League's Heavenly King Fei Xia, winning all 3 battles. However, after 3 battles, he was exhausted and couldn't continue. At that time, the Umno Alliance's great shaman, Lei Bao, was furious. He strictly ordered the Umno Alliance's Heavenly King Shui Zhan to fight. He even said that if the Astral Souls won this battle again, the victory would be sealed. From this person's token, the Astral Souls could be counted. At that time, the minister confronted the Flood Witch, and the emperor restrained the Tao League's Thunder Tao. They fought from afar, and in these 2 battles, even if the minister and the emperor fought with their lives on the line, they could only fight for a draw. In the 9 battles, Heavenly King Wang had already won 3 battles. He only needed to win the 4th battle, and the outcome would be decided. But the remaining people of the Astral Souls could not win the blood battle. Heavenly King Wang Feihong laughed and fought. He smiled calmly and said, "The Astral Souls have always had my name, so I fought the Heavenly King Shui Zhan." How could Heavenly King Wang not know that he was exhausted? He was definitely not the opponent's opponent, but he had already made up his mind to use extreme moves. His first move was to perish together with the Heavenly King Shui Zhan by a self-detonation. Before he died, he only roared, "Lei Bao, can you keep your promise?" After that battle, the sky-inspecting minister and the Flood Witch fought to a draw. From then on, they achieved immortal fame. Emperor Zhaixing also fought to a draw with the Tao League's number 1 person. From then on, he became the legend of the Astral Souls. The 2 great men became the pillars of the Astral Souls. It was from that time that the Astral Souls continent had a share of the token of gratitude. It was also after that battle. Until today, everyone in the Star Soul continent worshipped an additional name. Previously, they worshipped the god of wealth, the Celestial Emperor, the Kitchen Lord, and the god of salvation. But after that battle, there was an additional name, the god of war, war god, Heavenly King Guhong, Wang Feihong. The deity statues worshipped by the Star Soul human clan are all unarmed. Only the war god worshipped has a sword in his hand. Moreover, it is a treasured sword with the tip pointing outwards. It's the god of war for astral souls, forever. You want to deal with the Wang family and destroy them. Isn't that the same as destroying the myth of the god of war in the astral souls? Break the statue that has been worshipped for thousands of years. Zhou Xiaoyan took a deep breath and said, "We can't be careless about this matter. We have to deal with it carefully." Zhou Xiaoduo narrowed his eyes. "Of course I respect Heavenly King Wang and the god of war. But does that mean that the descendants of heroes can commit crimes at will without any scruples?" Zhou Xiaoyan was speechless, because there was no way to answer this question. Given the Wang family's actions, their viciousness, and their intentions, no matter how they were punished, it wouldn't be too much. However, Even if this matter were to be brought up, perhaps only the people of Phoenix City and the students from the second high school would be filled with righteous indignation. On the other hand, many people who had nothing to do with this matter would instead say, he saved the entire continent, but now he killed one of you. What's wrong with digging up one of your graves? Are you going to erase their achievements of saving the continent just because of one person and one grave? Yes, it's wrong for them to dig up your graves, but didn't your graves obstruct something? It had to be said. Sometimes, there were many things that couldn't be ignored. When one reached a certain height, a certain status, and involved a certain level of higher-ups, they would never be able to do it, because there were too many people who would jump out to stop you. And the people who stopped you were usually on the side of justice. At least, they were on the side of justice in the current world. This was the biggest helplessness of being a person. How would one know the pain of being cut by a knife when the knife didn't cut one's own body? No matter how much one boasted, it was just one person's words and one's own selfishness. The truth was clear, and the follow-up. It was difficult to follow up for the time being. So Xiaoduo had to temporarily stop the interrogation. He only felt that the weight in his heart could not be removed. Looking at these 5 people, he felt angry and disgusted. With a heavy heart, he and Zhu Xiaoyan left the area of the dimension destroying pagoda. But the two of them did not return to Shangjing City directly. Instead, they sat in a secluded place with an unprecedentedly solemn expression and did not speak for a long time. The problem now was not about who won or lost, but about whether they could move or not. I still want to move. After careful consideration, Zhu Xiaoduo said slowly, I'm not being impulsive. I've thought about it for a long time. Before coming Shangjing, I had thought about what I would do if His Majesty killed my teacher. How to put it into action. I've really thought about it. Zhu Xiaoyan's beautiful eyes deepened. Then what did you do after you thought about it? Zhu Xiaoduo smiled easily. His Majesty didn't teach me. His Majesty is not my teacher. He's just a stranger to me. He smiled in a relaxed manner as he looked at the white clouds drifting across the sky. He softly said, regardless of whether it was before I came or now, there's only one thought in my heart. My teacher must not die in vain. So, no matter who killed my teacher, I will take revenge. I'm not a talented leader, nor a talented general. I don't even have the ability to lead a region. So Xiaoduo said slowly, I can't protect the peace of a region, and I can't become the god of war of the continent. The so-called ancient legends are just legends to me. I have no intention of becoming the totem pillar of the human race. But I'm sure I can do one thing. So Xiaoduo smiled happily. I'll be good to whoever is good to me. That's what I can do. I don't care if he's the descendant of the star-plucking emperor, the son of the heavenly king of the right, or the grandson of the sky-inspecting minister, as long as he doesn't mess with me. If he messes with me, Zhu Xiaoduo said very calmly, there's only one reason in my heart. Right and wrong, there's only one reason. Teacher Qin Fangyang was very kind to me. He died because of me, so I must take revenge for him. Whoever killed him must pay the price. Old Principal He Yuanyue, even if she put aside the fact that she devoted her life to the astral souls of the continent, she's still my benefactor. She's my most respected teacher. Whoever wants to dig up her grave will be my sworn enemy. No matter what kind of background the Wang clan has, or how glorious they are, or if they're the epitome of justice, as long as they do this, I won't let them off. I'm such a simple person. I'm a selfish person who doesn't care about the big picture. So Xiaoduo smiled brightly. So, there's no need to worry. Do everything according to your heart. So Xiaoyan's beautiful eyes sparkled. Then, there's no then. We need to respect the god of war, but I still want to kill the Wang clan. I won't disrespect the god of war because of the Wang clan's sins, but I won't let the Wang clan sins go because of my respect for the god of war. So Xiaoduo said softly, I believe, if Senior Wang Feihong was still here, maybe he would be the first to draw his sword. Zhuo Xiaoyan was silent, but the light in her eyes shone brightly. She suddenly felt that puppy was so cute right now. He was so cute that she wanted to rush into his arms, hug him, and praise him. You're awesome. He's so handsome. At this moment, Zhuo was stunned for a moment. His phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from Huruyan. "Where are you?" Zhuo looked at the 3 words. His eyes immediately darkened. Something happened. Zhuo took a deep breath. He felt as if his heart was covered by dark clouds in the sky. Zhuo beautiful eyebrows immediately rose sharply. This message, combined with the previous interrogation, made it obvious to the 2 of them what had happened. It was a message from teacher Huruyan. Ever since Xiaoduo left Phoenix City, he really hadn't received a single call from teacher Huruyan, nor any news from her. Huruyan liked Xiaoduo to the core. It had always been like this. However, Huruyan also knew that Xiaoduo was a warrior. During a battle, an untimely call could cost Xiaoduo his life. Therefore, although she was always worried about Xiaoduo, she had never taken the initiative to send a message to Xiaoduo. She would rather worry about herself than cause any trouble or delay to Xiaoduo. But now, Huruyan had sent him such a message. Xiaoduo took a deep breath and dialed the number back. In Phoenix City, Huruyan was standing in front of Feng Huihui and He Yuanyue's tombs with a face full of anger. He Yuanyue's tomb had become a huge pit. Even the tombstone had been broken into several pieces. All the items that had been buried with her had turned into a mess. Many treasures had disappeared without a trace. This old principal, who had devoted his life to the country, the people, the students, and the mainland, could not even rest in peace after his death. On one side of the mountain rock, there were 2 sentences carved. The situation in Shangjing is turbulent. Why should the dead get involved? These 2 short sentences clearly explain the motive for this incident. It was because it involved some game between the upper echelons of Shangjing or something else that Huruyan, Li Changjiang, Luo Lai, Sun Fengho, Jiang Zhongbin, and the others all stood there with pale faces. Their bodies were trembling with anger. They stared at the grave that had become a huge pit. Their eyes were filled with disbelief and anger. They had never thought that such a thing would happen. This kind of heartless thing really happened in broad daylight, and the culprit actually left a message in such a grandiose manner. Jiang Zhongbin was the first to break down. He howled to the sky, "Fuck your mother! Fuck your mother! Shangjing, you're so fucking amazing! Fuck your mother! Fuck your ancestors!" Countless obscenities rushed out from the mouths of the 2 bureau chiefs, Jiang Zhongbin and Sun Fengho. Like a torrential river, they were crying and cursing at the same time. They felt as if their hearts were being cut into pieces in an instant. Chapter 1109. Sun Fengho and Jiang Zhongbin knelt on the ground, gritting their teeth in anger. Tears of grief and indignation streamed down their faces. Guilt, self-blame, and resentment at their own uselessness made them feel like they were about to explode. Ever since their former principal, He Yuanyue, passed away, the 2 of them habitually came to He Yuanyue's grave to vent their frustrations, whether they were happy, troubled, or difficult. Whether they were facing difficulties at work or family problems, the 2 of them habitually came to He Yuanyue's grave to vent their frustrations. It was as if their teacher was still alive, listening to their complaints with a warm smile on her face. It was as if their teacher would still be able to solve their problems after they complained to her. But now, even their teacher's grave had been dug up. When the 2 of them witnessed this scene with their own eyes, they felt as if the sky had collapsed. Also, their hearts were broken. The place that used to be the warmest in their hearts had turned to ice. A strong sense of self-blame suddenly welled up in their hearts. What use am I? I've been here every day to look at my teacher's grave, but now her grave has been destroyed. Am I supposed to come here every day to complain? I can't even protect my teacher's grave. What am I supposed to say about bringing prosperity to the people? What am I supposed to say about keeping the people safe? Isn't that a joke? My teacher spent her entire life for the country, for the people, and for the future of humanity. Now, someone actually destroyed her grave 100 years after her death. Sun Fengho's eyes were red as he roared at the sky. Heavens! So what if you're a good person? So what if you're a bad person? Have you ever opened your eyes and looked? Have you ever punished a bad person? Have you ever praised a good person? So what if you're serving the country and the people? Won't your corpse be left in the wilderness after you die? Want to be peaceful? So what if you're full of evil? Didn't you enjoy glory and wealth when you were alive? Enjoy all the luxuries? You're the heavens, but can't you uphold justice? Can't you uphold justice? Why is this happening? Everyone present, one by one, suffered a complete mental breakdown. Shangjing, Shangjing my ass. Jiang Zhongbin gritted his teeth and took out his phone with tears streaming down his face. He called the old man. I don't want to stay in Phoenix City anymore. I want to get promoted and get rich. Think of a way to transfer me to Shangjing. On the other side, Director Jiang was on the verge of breaking down. He howled, "What the fuck are you talking about? I don't care if you're talking nonsense or not. Anyway, I want to be transferred to Shangjing and have real power. I want to be an official, a high-ranking official. I can't go to Shangjing even if I want to. How can I get you there? Think of something. You must think of a way for me. Who do you think you're talking to? Believe it or not, I'll beat you to death. Whatever, I'm going to Shangjing anyway." Slap. The call was cut off. Jiang Zhongbin was still shouting, "I want to go to Shangjing. I want to go to Shangjing. I'm going to avenge my teacher." At this moment, ring ring ring, Hu Riyun's cell phone rang. So Xiao Duo called back. It's a call from Xiao Duo. Hu Riyun sighed. So Xiao Duo felt that something was wrong with the message she sent, so he immediately called back. Hu Riyun coughed. She hugged her cell phone and walked more than 100 meters away before answering the call. She said softly, "Xiao Duo." Zhua Xiaoduo's voice came from the other end. "Teacher Hu, you must have something to tell me since you sent me a message, right?" Hu Riyun was silent for a moment. Then she said, "No." Zhua Xiaoduo's deep voice came from the other end of the line. "Teacher Hu, is it that the old principal's grave has been destroyed?" Even Hu Riyun felt that his voice sounded a little gloomy. There was an inexplicable feeling of coldness. Hu Riyun was stunned. How did Zhua Xiaoduo know? Hu Riyun asked hurriedly, "Xiaoduo, you're in Phoenix City?" She turned around like a whirlwind. Her eyes were filled with uncertainty. Could it be that Zhua Xiaoduo was also here? But when she looked around, she did not see Zhua Xiaoduo. However, Hu Riyun's words revealed too many things in an instant. Zhua Xiaoduo understood everything in an instant. He was silent for a long time. Then he said in a hoarse voice, "Teacher Hu, could you please take a picture of the old principal's grave and show it to me?" Zhua Xiaoduo only felt a chill in his heart. He was so depressed that he did not want to speak. After saying this, he silently hung up the phone. He was in a daze. Yuan's face appeared in his mind again. It was as if she was standing in front of him, looking at him gently and kindly. He said slowly, "I hope that my home will not be destroyed. I hope that my country." Zhua Xiaoduo closed his eyes abruptly. His cheeks bulged as he gritted his teeth. He took a deep breath and exhaled deeply that he did not say a word. When he heard the other party's plan, Zhua Xiaoduo shouted angrily and almost lost control of his emotions. However, after confirming this matter, Zhua Xiaoduo did not want to say a word. There was no need to say anything. What the old principal's spirit in heaven wanted to see was not his incompetent rage and useless roar. From this moment on, there was no turning back for this matter. He lowered his head and recited softly, "There are many regrets in this life. My great love fills the galaxy. The spring breeze spreads across the world. Thousands of years of history are carved by jade." This was the poem that he had given to He Yuanyue. It was also the poem that He Yuanyue had said in advance to be engraved on the tombstone. In the end, it was engraved on the tombstone. Now that the grave was destroyed, Zhua Xiaoduo recited it in a low voice. With each word that he recited, Zhua Xiaoduo's gloomy aura intensified. When he reached the last 3 words, they were as thin as gossamer, but the gloomy and terrifying aura became more and more intense. Zhua Xiaoduo only felt a flame burning in his heart. It burned him and made him feel extremely uncomfortable. On the other side, Hu Riyun's mind raced. She wanted to say something to comfort him, but Zhua Xiaoduo had already hung up the phone. Hu Ruiyun held the phone and was in a daze. She was speechless for a long time. Xiao Duo said that we should take a few photos of the situation here and show them to him. Hu Ruiyun turned to look at her husband. The grave. According to tradition, graves and tombstones were not allowed to be photographed. There was a great taboo in this. However, Zhou Xiaoduo made such a request at this moment. Li Changjiang said softly, "Show it to him." Question mark. Hu Ruiyun looked at her husband. Don't forget that Zhou Xiaoduo is the successor of the old principle's aura observation technique. He is also proficient in the Tao of Feng Shui and the divination technique. Others may not understand the taboo in this, but Zhou Xiaoduo will definitely understand. Now that he has said that he wants to take photos, then you should take photos and show them to him. Why? Because just now, during the entire phone call, you didn't say anything at all. However, Zhou Xiaoduo clearly already knows, and he knows very clearly. That's why he asked to see the photos. This means that Zhou Xiaoduo knows much more than we do. So, take photos for him. Okay. Hu Ruiyun took a series of photos from top to bottom, from every direction, from the background, from a bird's-eye view of the forest. Everything was taken in great detail. After confirming that there were no mistakes, she sent them over. Then she attached a list of names and contact information. There were her own, Li Changjiang's, Jiang Zhangbin's, Sun Fengho's. That a few seconds later, so Xiaoduo's message arrived. Where is Professor Lan? Professor Lan left a while ago. I don't know why. Hu Ruiyun compiled the information, but her heart was filled with confusion. Why did Lan Jia leave? Wasn't she supposed to be guarding the old principal's grave? Why did she leave so suddenly, without so much as a word? Hu Ruiyun's heart was filled with confusion, but at the same time, she was relieved. It was fortunate that Lan Jia had left early. If she had been here when the enemy came to destroy the grave, she would have died. His sudden departure this time had allowed him to avoid death. As for whether or not Lan Jia had colluded with the enemy, Hu Ruiyun didn't even think about it. Even if she had colluded with others to destroy the old principal's grave, Lan Jia would never have done it. Understood. Zhou Xiaoduo's message arrived. Don't worry, Professor Hu. It's none of your business. Don't act rashly. The murderer is from Shangjing and has a strong background. They've already returned to Shangjing. I'm dealing with them now. Hu Ruiyun's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly sent 2 words. Be careful. She didn't reply. Her heart was full of complaints. This kid doesn't know what's important. He's dealing with the enemy. What's with the message? What's with the phone call? Ah, young people make people worry. So Xiaoduo put down the phone. His face was gloomy. After this news, Hu Ruiyun and the others wouldn't search for the murderer in Phoenix City. As long as they didn't act rashly, they would be much safer. The enemy's strength was too strong. Any random profound realm cultivator could sweep through second high and wipe out the entire school. Not to mention, it was very likely that the one who went was a flying cultivator, and there would be more than one of them. If Hu Ruiyun and the others discovered something, it would inevitably lead to another tragic sacrifice. Now that he had lost all of this, Zhou Xiaoduo felt that he couldn't bear it anymore. What's the matter? Zhou Xiaoyan's face was as gloomy as water. An unprecedented, biting, cold, murderous intent radiated from her body. Has the old principal's grave been destroyed? Zhou Xiaoduo was silent for a moment. Then, he said in a low voice, yes. Immediately, he turned on his phone and showed the photos Hu Ruiyun sent to Zhou Xiaoyan. Dozens of photos pieced together the situation at the other end. The scene was a complete mess. There was a big pit and a broken stone tablet. The stone tablet had fallen to one side and was already broken. The only part that was still intact had only one sentence left on it. Spring breeze peaches and plums throughout the world. And the only part that was still intact had this sentence engraved on it. In Zhou Xiaoduo's eyes, it was indescribably glaring. Spring breeze peaches and plums throughout the world. Throughout the world. So what? Wasn't his grave dug up in the end? He couldn't rest in peace even after he died. What was the point of talking about the 10,000-year jade pendant of history? Not even 2 years had passed, and his bones were ground to dust. What an ironic scene. When he saw the words on the stone wall next to him, Xiaoduo's heart was deeply pierced. It made his pupils contract abruptly like needles. The situation in Shangjing is turbulent. Why should the dead get involved? Xiaoduo's eyes were red. An inexplicable sound came from his throat. At this moment, his anger had obviously reached its peak. Is the Wang family so awesome? Then, let's have some fun. I'll play with you to the end. Chapter 11:10. Then let's play slowly. I wanted to kill him, but now I'm not satisfied. Xiaoduo sneered. Since that's the case, let's play from all sides. I hope you can afford to play. His fingers were flying as he began to type on his phone. After 2 hours, a report with tens of thousands of words was finished by Xiaoduo in a single stroke. Then, he packaged it and sent it to Shuai's company. As the big boss, he gave a strict order. Stop everything you're doing. Work at full capacity. Create as much hype as you can on the internet. I want the whole world to know about this. In the report, Xiaoduo pointed out the suspects without hesitation. Shangjing, the Wang family. After 80 years of hard work, the trees have grown into shade. After 40 years of planning, the astral souls have flourished. He was such a respectable old man. His entire life, he was cautious and conscientious. Everything he earned his life's work, he gave it all to his students and his astral soul. But after his death, his grave was even destroyed after his outstanding achievements. Can the Wang family of Shangjing be so arrogant after the God of War? The title of the God of War has protected your family for more than 10,000 years. The achievements of the God of War can protect your descendants for thousands of years. But can they offset all the bad things and be so crazy? It's said that the heavens have eyes. Then, where are the eyes of the heavens in the Yinwu Empire today? Is this the kind of treatment an old man who has had so many disciples should receive? Should he receive such an ending? How can a heroic soul rest in peace in the netherworld? Will she regret everything she did when she was alive? Will she feel that it was not worth it? Xiaoduo was filled with anger. His thoughts were flowing like a fountain. He wrote as if he had the help of the gods. Xiaoyan watched him write and sent it out. She couldn't understand. You want to fight the battle of public opinion first? Xiaoduo stopped and said faintly, the Wang family is definitely not a small opponent. With our strength, we can't crush them. If we want to settle our grudges, we might not be able to kill them all. Since you want to take revenge, you must be clear-headed and not impulsive. Once we're impulsive, even we'll be buried in there. Then, there'll be no one to take revenge. Xiaoduo added, and because of the glory of the Wang clan's war god, the upper echelons of the continent might not necessarily stand on our side. Xiaoyan was puzzled. Why do you say that? Xiaoduo sneered and said, the Wang family has gone against the law and lost all conscience. They must have done some bad deeds in the past few years. How could they not know about the inspection history of the continent? However, the Wang clan was still standing strong. Why? It's because of Heavenly King Wang's last sentence. Xiaoduo took a deep breath and said, if you put yourself in their shoes, you can't blame these upper echelons. If I were them, if Li Chenglong and Long Yuxing died for me, for the people of the continent, sacrificing themselves heroically, then, if their descendants do something thousands of years later, I'm afraid I can't be fair. There's a high possibility that I'll stand by and watch or secretly make a move, but I definitely won't do something like exterminating my brother's family. Even if in the end, when their descendants reach the end of the road, they will never find me. Because if I help them, I'll be letting down the people they killed. If I don't help, I'll be letting down the brothers of the past. So, I can only disappear and escape. I won't destroy any balance. That's inevitable. This is the real foundation of the Wang clan. But understanding is one thing. What we do now is another. Since we can't take them down with our strength for the time being, we naturally have to attack them from all sides. On one hand, we'll create public opinion to discuss the Wang clan. On the other hand, we'll call for a common enemy. As long as we use this power well, we can arouse the sympathy of all the students who graduated from the Astral Souls Academy. If all the students and teachers of the continent really resist, at that time, even if the Wong clan doesn't die, it'll still die. Zhuo Xiaoduo said indifferently. Others can use public opinion to force Principal Shi to his death. Can I use the same method to kill the Wong clan? Maybe the Wong clan's push-hand team is really the main culprit behind Principal Shi's death. Zhuo Xiaoyan nodded and said with some admiration, I didn't think that far. I thought you were too angry and just came up with this method to disgust them. Zhuo Xiaoduo sweated. What's the use of disgust? Things have to be done step by step. Because I'm worried that with so many flying teams in the Wong clan, there must be Dao integration stage or even peak Dao integration stage cultivators among the upper echelons. It's not impossible for there to be Dao integration stage cultivators among them. And we're far from being a match for such a force. That's why I'm trying so hard to think of ways to deal with them. So Xiaoduo sighed. If I had the confidence to kill them with 2 strikes, I wouldn't have the patience to do so. Even the palace would have been destroyed long ago. So you're not stupid. Zhuo Xiaoyan smiled. She teased. Then, she frowned slightly and carefully calculated the power of the Wong clan in her mind. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that it was too powerful. The Wong clan was definitely not unshakable, nor was it invincible. However, the Wong clan's greatest protective talisman now was the descendant of the god of war. It wasn't that many powerful cultivators didn't want to deal with them, but that they couldn't. This was the true protective talisman. Zhuo Xiaoyan was only thinking about one thing now. Did the Wong clan not know that they were in danger of losing their reputation for doing such a thing? That was for sure. As long as it was exposed, they would be condemned by the public. For such a thing, they would dig up graves and leave clues. Even if Zhuo Xiaoduo hadn't confirmed the target now, as long as the people seeking revenge arrived in the capital, there was a high probability that they would find the Wong clan. And this kind of senior who had disciples all over the world would definitely have terrifying power. In other words, it was inevitable that the Wong clan would be exposed. The probability was at least 80%. It was impossible for a big clan like the Wong clan to not think of this. However, since the Wong clan could think of it, they still did it. They forced Zhuo Xiaoduo to come to Shangjing at all costs. This proved that Zhuo Xiaoduo was important in the Wong clan's plan. And this importance made it even more clear how dangerous Zhuo Xiaoduo was. Zhuo Xiaoyan couldn't help but lean closer to Zhuo Xiaoduo. Feeling the warmth of Zhuo Xiaoduo's body, Zhuo Xiaoyan's heart was at peace, and she made up her mind. I won't leave you half a step. Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at the night sky, looked at the sky, and laughed mockingly. He said lightly, Actually, this world is so incomprehensible. For example, the evil people can kill the babies of good people with a bayonet, but if a good person kills the babies of evil people for revenge, they will immediately be called cruel. Countless people will jump out to condemn them. Evil people can slaughter the entire family, not leaving even a chicken or a dog alive. However, revenge can only be achieved by killing the main culprit. Countless people will stand up and say that the child is innocent after all. How ridiculous! This world is just so incomprehensible. The reason is that these apologists who have nothing to do with themselves are showing sympathy. They affect other people's happiness to gain their own moral pleasure. This kind of person can only bully good people, because they don't dare to say anything to the evil people. If they dare to say to the evil people that the children are innocent, the evil people will kill them together. So they don't dare to keep the blood of good people, but only the blood of evil people, because good people won't kill them. How ridiculous, how ironic. Once you understand this world, you will understand. If a person wants to live a carefree life, just being a good person is not enough. But it doesn't matter. Fortunately, I, Zhuo Xiaoduo, have never been a good person. Zhuo Shuai's company received the text and pictures from the big boss. After reading it slightly, everyone was already covered in cold sweat, and they were at a loss. This was the first time the big boss directly gave an order to interfere with the company's operations. And this first order was already so exciting and explosive. Wasn't this report a little too sensitive? It was so sensitive that everyone's scalp was tingling. What should we do? General Manager Gu Qi urgently called all the company's executives and department heads for a meeting. Zhuo Shuai's company was no longer the small company it used to be. It was already a giant in the entertainment industry. Every film and TV series produced by Zhuo Shuai's company became popular as soon as they were filmed, and they became popular all over the world. The market value of Zhuo Shuai's company had already exceeded 100 billion yuan. If such a behemoth were to use all of its channels to publish Zhuo Shuai's article, the social impact would be unimaginable. Especially the report's direction was simple and straightforward, directly pointing at the Wang family in Shangjing, without any concealment. Everyone, let's talk. What should we do about this? Gu Qi sat on the chair, and his face was full of fatigue. Once this report is released, Zhuo Shuai's company will be in the teeth of the storm, and there will be no turning back. What's more, even if we all disappear without a trace, we can still foresee it. The implications of this are simply too great. The other party is the God of War's family, and they have a long history of meritorious deeds. They benefit the world, benefit the common people, and benefit the future generations. Their achievements will last for thousands of generations. Gu Qi only felt waves of fatigue in his heart. Ever since Zhuo Shuai's company received the capital injection, it suddenly received all kinds of high-end talents. With the momentum of 100 rivers converging into the sea, the entire company rose from the dead, turned its losses into profits, and became famous all over the world. From the beginning to the end, it took less than a year to reach the top of Fenghai, one of the largest enterprises in the entire Star Spirit continent. During this period, Gu Qi always felt like he was dreaming, and he was afraid that when he woke up, he would find out that it was a dream. At the end of the dream, he still couldn't guarantee his return, and he would go bankrupt in the blink of an eye. As time went on, the company's scale became bigger and bigger, and its foundation became stronger and stronger. Gu Qi had a better grasp of reality, and he had become a real winner, and he was far more successful than he had imagined in the past. It was the kind of meteoric rise that he dared not even dream of. It was at this moment that he unexpectedly received this order that was no different from a bolt from the blue. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.